You ready, Minna? Y'all ready? Good evening. Time now is 5:30. We call the Leesburg City Commission meeting to order. If you can all stand, have a invocation followed by the pledge of allegiance to the flag. Let us all pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for this being able to live in such a wonderful city such as Leesburg, Florida. We thank you for this commission. We thank you for our city administration, the staff that help make our city run so efficiently and effectively. We thank you for the residents that make up our city, those who visit, work, and employ people here in our city. We pray for a great, prosperous year for our business owners, our residents. We thank God for our troops around the world that fight for the freedom that we so enjoy. We ask you to continue to keep our public service officials covered, those men and women that fight to protect us on a daily basis. We pray now, God, what we do tonight will be beneficial for all the Leesburg residents, and what we do tonight, we pray for your wisdom and guidance and understanding. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item of business is to elect mayor, city of Leesburg. Do we have a motion, recommendation?
Make a motion to elect Commissioner Peterson.
Duly noted.
Second.
Any other nominations? Nominations are now closed. Roll call.
Commissioner Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Roebuck,
Yes.
Commissioner Bury,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Mayor Christian.
Yes. Welcome, sir.
Good luck. Okay. John, you gonna take John? Is that John by chance? Well, wish me luck, everybody. So next, we need to elect Mayor Pro Tem.
Make a motion to elect Commissioner Bury.
I'll second that.
I don't think you can second that.
Okay, I didn't know if.
Yes.
Okay, second. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Okay, we'll vote on it. Roll call.
Commissioner Roebuck,
Yes.
Commissioner Bury,
Yes.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Commissioner Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Peterson.
Yes. John, you want to step forward? Well, these are hard shoes to fill, I have to tell you. So presented to John H. Christian in appreciation for your dedicated public service as mayor of the city of Leesburg for 2021 by the City Commission, January 3rd, 2022.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You got it.
No, thank you, John, for everything you've done. John has been mayor, I believe, 5 times. And this would be my first time, so there'll probably be a little difference in how I run a meeting. Next is, this is an organizational meeting, is the appointments for the different committees. I assume everybody's had a chance to review. You want to just go through them in order? Okay.
Personnel Committee.
So, starting with the Personnel Committee, I see that one as me, with Mayor Christian. I'll stay there.
I'm fine
Okay.
with it.
You're okay?
Yes, sir.
Lake County Action Agency, Inc. We currently have Commissioner Christian and Commissioner Bury is the alternate. I see 2 nods down there. Okay, that's
Yes,
good.
sir.
Lake County League of Cities Board of Directors, that is myself, and Commissioner Connell is the alternate. And I'm happy to continue that. Florida League of Cities, again, myself and Mayor Christian is the alternate. I keep saying mayor. I'm taking me a while not to get used to Mayor Christian.
Yeah, that's all right. You'll get used to it.
Okay, you're okay?
Yes, sir. I'm
Okay.
fine, Mayor.
Thank you, thank you. The Metropolitan Planning Organization, Commissioner Roebuck, I'm looking at you. Are you willing to stay on?
Yeah, I'm the chair, so I'd like to stay.
Okay. Thank you. And Bury is the alternate? Okay. St. Johns River Water Management District, we have Commissioner Bury, and he's nodding yes, that's good. Florida Municipal Power Agency, we've got electric director. We'll just leave those in place. Okay. Right,
And then myself and Jim Williams serve as alternates.
okay. The Florida Municipal Electric Association, same thing, we've got 2, like to leave those in place, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, Electric Director Brad Chase, the alternate City Manager Al Minner. Florida Municipal Power Agency Policy Makers Liaison Committee, Commissioner Roebuck, you willing to continue that one? Okay. And Commissioner Bury is the alternate, okay. Leesburg Center for the Arts is myself, and I'm willing to continue that one unless somebody just desperately wants that one. No? Okay. And then Leesburg Partnership, Commissioner Burry has been the appointee there, and he's nodding yes. Okay. Okay, that's it for that.
Yeah, and if you need to, just confirm by email for the next meeting, your airport board appointees. We do that on an annual basis. And if everybody's is the same, we can make note of that and revisit that at our next meeting, or send Andy an email, and then we'll make it public at the next meeting.
Do we have to vote on this?
No, the airport is singular.
Oh, yeah, on this
so
one here, we don't-
you point whoever you want.
Okay.
Each commissioner / mayor has an appointment.
Okay. And normally, this would be the end of this meeting. This would be an organizational meeting.
Yeah, I was appointed to a trauma board. I don't know if that's one of these, that I took Elise's place, and I'm willing to stay on doing that.
Yeah, you might want to just, as long as everybody's okay with that.
Yeah,
But
Repeat
I think
that
that's
one.
He's on the trauma board.
Okay, okay. So now we're moving on to public hearings. We have a second reading. Would somebody please introduce 6A1?
I'll introduce and ask to be read by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, annexing certain real property consisting of approximately 1,088 plus minus acres, being generally located east of U.S. Highway 27, north of Dewey Robbins Road, and south of County Road 48, lying in sections 24 and 25, Township 20 South, Range 24 East, and sections 20, 29, 30, 31, and 32, Township 20 South, Range 25 East, Lake County, Florida. Providing that said property so annexed shall be liable for its proportionate share of the existing and future indebtedness of said city. Providing that such annexed property shall be subject to all laws and ordinances of said city, as if all such territory had been a part of the city of Leesburg at the time of passage and approval of said laws and ordinances. Providing that such annexed territory shall be placed in City Commission District 3, and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Just helping the mayor out with some
Yeah, no, obviously.
structural, procedural stuff here.
Okay,
So
obviously I
that's-
need help. Now?
So, yeah, I'd lead it off with that. If Dan Miller, our Planning and Zoning Director, to just make a brief presentation on the matter, and then the mayor will open the public hearing.
Okay. Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Dan Miller, Planning and Zoning Director. Tonight, we're looking at the Whispering Hills project. It's approximately 1,088 acres. The requests, there are three on the agenda tonight, the first being an annexation of that 1,088 acres of property. The second request will be a large-scale comp plan map amendment that would take the property from rural under the Lake County comp plan to neighborhood mixed use under the City of Leesburg comp plan. And then finally, the third of those three actions would be the zoning, which is a request to take the property from Lake County agriculture to City of Leesburg PUD. Under that proposed PUD, approximately 2,100 units. Tara, the attorney for that property is here and will be making a presentation, but approximately 2,100 units. There are numerous uses within there, including mainly detached single-family, retail shops, restaurants, medical offices. So it is a very large development for the city. It is, let's see, over 30%, I forget the exact number, but over 30% is open space. There are architectural standards within the PUD for design. There are site access and improvements that are required. I believe under the latest proposal, the proposed site plan map has been modified from what it originally came in with lots all around Number 2 Road. The applicant has worked with the surrounding property owners and made acreage lots on there and then access to number 2 road has basically been taken out for the property itself, for the majority of the property, and all access comes from US 27. There are a number of other, it's a pretty tight PUD within there. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to ask them. A number of your questions can be answered by Tara Tedrow, the attorney, who will be making a presentation. I know there are many people from the public here who would like to speak as well.
Thank you, Dan. I was going to ask the commission if they would prefer to have the public comments first and then wrap up with commission comments afterward. I see a few nods. Would Tara like to speak at this time?
Similar to the first reading, I was going to address all 3 items. I know you have to vote separately on them, but I was going to have one presentation for all 3, if that's okay. Perfect. And for the record, my name is Tara Tedrow, Lowndes Law, 215 North Eola Drive, here on behalf of the developer. As everybody in the room is probably quite familiar at this point, the project is called Whispering Hills, and it is a large master planned community that is contemplated to be annexed into the city of Leesburg. It's approximately 1,088 acres with 642 net developable acres. I think some of these are significant statistics because when you hear that a project is 1,000 acres, you assume that each of those 1,000 acres is going to have some sort of development on it. We only have 642 developable acres out of the entire project site, which predominantly came from one seller that owned this land. 203 acres of our property are in wetlands. Under the PUD agreement, which your city staff came up with and they originally drafted, it was not drafted by the developer or myself. It came from your city after careful consideration of the compatibility and consistency standards and requirements with your city's code and your comprehensive plan, also taking into consideration the existing developments that were around the project. Those 203 acres under the PUD standards have to be put under, certain acreage would have to be put under permanent conservation and dedicated to a water management district or another legal entity, which means those would be undevelopable acres that have to go through any permitting process for limited impacts. There's also significant standards on setbacks from any wetlands for development, the type of impacts that you can have, meaning we have to keep vegetation all around those existing wetlands. So now you have 203 acres that wouldn't be touched for development purposes on the property as well. 338 acres of the property are also contemplated for open space and recreation. Those 338 acres are going to be on the property to provide for passive and active amenities for recreational purposes, as well as just green space and perpetuity. Dan had mentioned that there's some open space requirements, and that's a 35% minimum open space standard over the entirety of the developable property that we have. So it's a pretty significant open space standard. Interestingly enough, it's the same open space standard that Lake County has in their rural future land use designation for certain densities, as well as the same standard of open space that Lake County has for their rural transitional future land use. Not that that would apply post-annexation, but worth mentioning. The proposed mixed-use development consists of a maximum of 2,942 residential units, which we'll talk about that density further, not to exceed a gross density of 2.7 dwelling units per acre. 44 acres are set out for a town center. That town center itself has to have 20% open space within it. You can see on the side one of the conceptual renderings that we had SNME draw up for us as to what that village town center might look like. We have a minimum of 3 acres that are dedicated to the city for support services. So whatever the city would like to do with those 3 acres, they will belong to the city. Minimum, like I said, 35% open space over the entire project, and there are also 15 acres that we have offered to dedicate to the school board as well. This gives you a project aerial showing you where the project is located. And we looked at the areas around us, and interestingly, within a 2-mile radius all around the property, there's an estimated 10,000 residential units already developed. So if you look to the west of Highway 27, if you look north of the subject property, you can see what I would call classic urban sprawl. So if cities and counties continue to develop in patterns of disparate and disjointed subdivisions with no supportive commercial or any other type of amenities, we are going to have 100% automobile-dependent communities in perpetuity. And so I think that's the importance of large-scale, thoughtfully planned out, master-planned communities, is that it allows us to bring in different types of residential to serve a variety of types of housing and needs that a growing city demands for its residents, not just its residents now, but the ones who are coming in the future as well, which is why the city has a growth management plan, not a growth mitigation plan. This also shows you the proximity to other existing residential. Again, even looking more north on this aerial, you can see all the different types of residential development that exists. And I think in one community, Plantation alone, they have 4,000 residents, and that's just right on the other side of Highway 27. Shows you some proximity to existing commercial and PUD zoning that already exists there. You can see along Highway 27, there already are different varieties of commercial zoning that are on the east side of 27, which is where our property is also located. So our request is a recommendation of a final approval tonight, consistent with your staff and your planning commissions for the annexation, our large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, and our rezoning. By way of background, it was back in July when we had our Planning Commission hearing with a recommendation for approval. We've held a lot of meetings over time with residents that reached out to us, including site walks. We met at residents' houses to get views from their backyards, to see what they saw, and to promise them certain changes we would make after having those meetings. We've had community meetings here on a voluntary basis as well. DEO transmittal happened back in September. We received comments back from DEO, and it's important to note that there were no objections from DEO, so the only thing that we received back were comments from DEO. One of those comments was that you guys should talk to Lake County, and that certainly happened last Thursday. We also had a site meeting with some more residents back in November and have had ongoing communications, phone, text, and email with neighbors that resulted in quite a few site plan changes over time. So we have changed our plan at least a dozen times in direct response to what was asked of us by our neighbors who did reach out. In terms of a process, just for those in the audience who might not have come to any of those meetings, this is the land use entitlement phase, so we're requesting permission for certain uses and development standards. Planning Commission provided that recommendation for approval. Staff provided their professional opinion of a recommendation for approval, which, by the way, a staff recommendation for approval is considered competent and substantial evidence. First reading before City Council, where our project was then transmitted to the Department of Economic Opportunity for review, and we got no objections back. And if the project is approved on a second reading by City Council, that's when we go into a near $1 million phase of site engineering and detailed study work for drainage, stormwater, wetlands, utilities, master stormwater and utility plans, roadway design and construction, off-site improvement plans, as well as tree surveys and preservation plans that are required, all of which have to be reviewed and approved by your professional staff, as well as other local and state agencies with jurisdiction over the same. Our proposed PUD development standards are pretty lengthy. There's 20 pages of text in our PUD. I won't read it all to you tonight, but I'll go over some highlights. The project has to be developed in phases. You can see that we have certain phase lines, and with any development, part of that development and the phasing that we do is going to be dependent upon meeting concurrency. So we have to show that there's enough seats in schools, that we can mitigate impacts for traffic before we can start getting COs for our development phases. When it comes to the commercial development standards, minimum 20% open space and architectural standards set forth under your city's code for any of our commercial development. For our residential development, we have single family and multifamily, but the total buildable units are going to be dependent, as with any project, typically on the final engineered site plan. Your code requires a conceptual plan, which we provided per code. So our final density is determined after we deduct the amount of land needed for setbacks, landscaping buffers, open space, wetlands, conservation, stormwater, lot size minimums, streets, sidewalks, utilities, amenity, golf course, equestrian, et cetera. So we've had some folks come and say, exactly where are you putting these properties? Exactly how many land or houses are going to be on this portion of the land? And it's hard to say, and that's because, again, that second phase of the detailed site work is underway now, but that's not completed and isn't required to be prior to this phase under your city's code. So under our development standards, you can see that this is the site plan. There's a lot of details on the conceptual plan itself about the different types of areas and the different lot sizes we have. When we come to our residential development standards, there are some very specific and strict architectural diversity and design requirements. 2-story building height, 2-car garages, some minimum setbacks and building footprints established for different size lots. And then for roadway design, this is a big one because in the very beginning, we had our secondary main access point onto number 2 road, and we swiftly and continually received feedback that that was a bad idea. So we went back to the drawing board and figured out how can we take all of our traffic off of number 2 road. We had access point number 1 contemplated from day 1. Access point number 2 is something that today we've even talked to adjacent landowners about how we can design through their property to get to 27, which is really critical in filling in some of these missing pieces of transportation networks for your city. Your city's comprehensive plan requires, and I quote, "The city will require new development to be interconnected for transportation networks. Developers must design and provide connectivity and access between adjacent residential developments and nearby land uses." Objective 1.2 of your comprehensive plan is entirely about roadway connectivity and providing mandatory cross-access and cross-easements between projects. So Windmill PUD is one example of a project that already abuts ours and has connectivity to 27, which we've offered to even pay upfront costs to that developer to be able to provide for those roadway networks now. And we've also talked to other developers up to the north of that project to get connectivity through them. So one way or another, our secondary main access point is going to be through and up to US 27. And again, that is required by your comprehensive plan for the other developers to play ball with us on that one too. And I think that's a good thing because we want to put cars in an orderly fashion, not just on number 2 road, but get them out to US 27. When it comes to recreational requirements for the project, minimum of 13.5 acres of rec space. We have far exceeded that on our plans, and especially with the open space and the amenities that we're contemplating. We again have over 330 acres of open space provided already. The primary rec facility has to be constructed in conjunction and completed no later than a CO for the first 250 residential units so that we have those rec and amenities as we start to get more units out there on the property, and that's the same thing to additional active rec areas constructed before the CO of 500 homes. And then there's some required amenities under the PUD itself, things like the minimum 9-hole golf course, equestrian center, swimming pool, playground areas, trails, and other activities. The wetland and wildlife preservation, we had studies done. We performed a tortoise survey, skink survey, and overall wildlife survey. We're working with Florida Fish and Wildlife to either have gopher tortoise relocation or to establish a permanent conservation sanctuary area on site for our gopher tortoises. No skinks or nesting sandhill cranes were observed, no bald eagles on site. Our study was submitted as part of our initial application, so the city has a copy of that study from Modica. And one of the other things that's worth noting is, again, even though it doesn't apply, Lake County talks a lot about wildlife preservation plans and their comprehensive plan. The city also talks about wildlife preservation plans, so those are things that we have complied with and will continue to comply with during our site planning process. Here's our original concept plan. Showed you a lot of potential layouts of lots and some very dense development bordering the entirety of the property. This is what came before the Planning Commission back in July. This is actually a plan that we received a recommendation for approval from your Planning Commission and from your professional staff. So your Planning Commission didn't ask us to change this plan. Your staff didn't ask us to change this plan. The neighbors did, and so we did change this plan. So our revised concept plan is very different than what we had submitted initially. So we went back to rearrange where we clustered some of the density more toward 27. We increased the lot sizes in areas that neighbors had asked us. And here's some highlights, for example. This will show you different amenity areas all over the property that are contemplated, those community gardens, a petting zoo, dog parks, a community pool, a tennis court, our equestrian centers, a farmer's market. So some compatible types of amenities that will benefit not only those who live in our community, but would also the adjacent neighbors could certainly take full advantage of. We also have trails and paths contemplated for interconnectivity purposes. It says an 8-foot wide golf cart path and a 5-foot jogging exercise trail. Our engineers have gone back and looked at that in more detail, and it looks like it's probably more of a 10-foot wide golf cart path and an additional 6-foot wide jogging and exercise trail. So we would have that in addition to our equestrian trail as well that would provide that great connectivity all throughout the project. Here's some examples of direct responses to citizens. We were asked in Area M on our map to please increase our lot sizes. So you can see just how much density we were able to try to fit on that area of M. We went back and revised it, and we made it 1 to 2 acre lots. And so it had shown, and we had diagrammed out, again, don't know how you can actually, whether you can build it, because that net developable is a little different than when you actually go out there and do the site engineering work, but we had shown 488 lots, and we agreed to 41 lots in that area M instead. So shifting around density to move it from the areas folks had asked us to. In Area L, we had 225 lots shown in that area, and the residents came and asked us to change that, and we put 30. So we changed our concept plan to show 30 lots along that area as well as a means of transitioning. And the most recent change, which wasn't before you in our first reading, was the areas that we have here closest to number 2 and kind of off Turkey Lake. We had shown 67 lots just directly bordering it, a lot more than just 67, but just directly along that property line. And we agreed in a meeting in the backyard of 2 of those residents that we would make those lots back there 1 to 2 acre buildable lots with about 5 acres total of inclusive green space between them. So it'd be 1 to 2 acre buildable and about 3 acres around of additional green space to have it be about those 5 acre lots, similar to what they had, and that was just at their request. So we agreed to do that as well. You can see we took that down to 9 lots bordering their property. So these are some significant concessions, and I would say, fortunately for my client, because it's good practice, maybe unfortunately for anybody else, the bar's been set really high on communications with neighbors and being responsive to some of those concerns. And we've really gone out of our way to try to be as responsive as we can, short of just pull the project, which wasn't on the table on our end. But other than that, we really did try to go back and make as many concessions as we could to help make the project more palatable for some of the folks who were living next to our property. So just to outline some of those voluntary PUD changes, we also went back and said in the PUD, put some more prohibited uses. We won't do things like consignment stores or pawn shops or scrap yards or discount dollar stores. We changed those lot sizes, like I said, in response to what some of the residents had asked. That's reflected on the concept plan. We added in, after conversation with the school board of Lake County, that we would be willing to dedicate 15 acres of land located on our property or on the adjacent properties that we also own, which aren't under this PUD but are in Lake County, in order to mitigate impacts of residential development, and we'll work with the school board on finding a suitable location. In addition, we also agreed that it would be a minimum 9-hole golf course instead of a minimum 27-hole golf course. We added section 20E that we would strive to be certified by the Audubon Cooperative Sanctuary Program for golf courses. I don't know if any other golf course in Lake County has that certification or that type of certification, but it is an environmentally friendly design element that has very strict standards for golf course design, where you have to meet those standards and you have to continue to be recertified. And so it is one of the highest bars that you can set. And so we put a voluntary condition in there without being asked that we would also have that. So just a little more information is that you have to meet environmental components with your golf course design. Once you're designated, it's only awarded to golf courses once you can meet those management standards in each area. And so that's something that we've agreed to strive to achieve and get certification from them or an equivalent organization. In addition, the project also had some requirements for walls, so like a stucco type wall as a visual buffer. And I went back and thought about it and thought maybe some residents don't want us to have a stucco wall next to us. Perhaps they want a split rail fence instead, or maybe they don't want a fence. So only if that neighbor agreed and wanted us to not have a wall, then we could come back and say, okay, we won't put that wall there if they think that's too obtrusive. We'll put a split rail fence or something else that a neighbor would agree to if that seemed more compatible from a transitional standard. So it gives the right so long as that neighbor provided a signed, notarized, and recorded affidavit to our site plan that would change that standard. In addition, dark sky lighting got brought up by some residents, and a lot of people talk about dark sky lighting. Code always vaguely addresses it. Lake County code just says dark sky, city code says dark sky. So we went to the International Dark Sky Association standards, which are I guess the global best practices for dark sky lighting. And we said, what does it mean to actually have dark sky lighting, especially in a rural area? Well, the International Dark Sky Association has a lot of information on that, and they create low ambient lighting zones, moderate ambient lighting zones based on the environment around you, the uses that you have. And so we said that we would have enhanced dark lighting standards, that we may utilize those, work with your staff on some of those, and have your staff review and approve our lighting plans based on safety, city code, and to consider those recommendations for lighting zones. Those zone considerations under those international standards even talk about default zones for rural and low density areas. So I think this is probably, again, the gold standard for what other developers should be doing when it comes to dark sky lighting plans is offering up specifics like this, the way that we did in the PUD. As we noted before, we removed our main access point from the project onto number 2 road, and we'll have our main access points onto US 27. The area M that I showed you, it is across number 2 road. So we do have that 41 lot area we showed you. Those residents would have a gated access into the main project area. So they could just go right across number 2 into the main project area. Access out of the main project is emergency vehicular access, which is required under code. And then it would also be for those 41 owners to be able to go right back to their house right across number 2 road. But we are not having number 2 anymore as our main access point. We have even revised our traffic study to put all of our traffic onto 27 instead as our main access points, those 2. And that was already resubmitted to the city and to the county for final review as well. We also, again, volunteered to donate the land, strive for certification for environmental best practices, added community gardens, petting zoos, pickleball courts, a second equestrian facility, more rec facilities and a farmer's market, increased our lot sizes in a lot of significant ways. I mean, we took some 50-foot lots and made them 1 to 2 acre lots. It's a pretty significant change, and we did that again because we were asked by some residents. And we have agreed to increase our vegetative buffer significantly next to some specific properties that talk to us, and we've enhanced our dark sky standards. When it comes to the regulations that you have to review applications like this under, they are set forth very clearly under your city code. These regulations are not set forth by county code or county land development code. These are set forth by city code. And under your city code, we meet a lot of your standards. For example, the project's going to add residential and non-residential features that satisfy your visioning and your city's GMP for a diverse array of housing options, including single-family and multifamily at varying prices and sizes. Office, commercial, and retail uses strategically located to take advantage of 27. Significant acreage dedicated to recreational uses and open space. Some housing options like ALF and amenitized lake and water features. Moreover, specifically, Objective 1.2 talks about protecting neighborhoods and diversifying housing. So our project provides opportunities for diverse residential areas. It encourages varying housing types to meet lifestyle and needs of all residents, and it protects your existing neighborhoods because the modified plan that we provided shows significant setbacks and the transitioning of proper planning. Objective 1.4 for sustainable development, City of Leesburg has proposed a smart growth development pattern that makes efficient use of developable land, fully utilizes urban services and infrastructure, promotes a wide variety of transportation and housing options, absorbs and effectively serves a significant portion of the anticipated future population growth of the city, protects architectural and environmental character of the city through compatible, high quality, and environmentally sensitive development practices, and recognizes your role as a regional hub of commerce and employment. Moreover, with mixed-use development, policy 1.4.1, mixed-use developments and mixed-use buildings are encouraged in the city of Leesburg with appropriate buffers between uses to ensure compatibility. We provide that type of mixed-use development. Land use compatibility under Objective 1.6 of your comprehensive plan, we provide for that adequate buffering and setbacks between internal and external uses. Our less intensive transitional uses are located between low-density residential with higher density and commercial, then through the existing commercial zoning along 27. And our design requirements and voluntary plan changes certainly address the impacts of new development on adjacent properties. Objective 1.7, transportation land use compatibility. The city is supposed to ensure population densities, housing types, employment patterns, and land uses are consistent with your transportation network. Cross-access between adjacent properties is provided, and our main access points are on to 27. Policy 1.8 of adjacent jurisdictions. The city has promoted compatibility of adjacent land uses. That annexation provides for sound growth and development within the city, manages the anticipated growth in a manner creating more sustainable development based on residential neighborhoods and mixed communities, ensuring compatibility between the environment, new development, and existing developed areas. So again, we do not just continue to promote urban sprawl. The project will be designed to ensure appropriate buffering and setbacks are in place, especially when transitioning between different uses. We help absorb some of the portion of the city's anticipated future growth, and we will increase the anticipated impact from the collection of impact fees, ad valorem taxes, and utility charges. Moreover, when it comes to the annexation, just so everybody is on the same page, I had submitted a letter to Lake County last week. Happy to submit this again for the record. Your city clerk already has a copy of this letter dated December 27th, but it outlines the reasons why our application met Florida statutory minimum requirements under Chapter 171 for an annexation. There was some confusion that's been stated on the record at Lake County public hearings as well as previously during hearings here that Part 2 of Chapter 171 is what applies to an annexation such as ours. It is Part 1 that applies to an annexation such as ours. First part of that 171, just for everybody's edification, is that if you are contiguous to municipal boundaries, which we are, and we meet those statutory requirements, then we can annex in. There is an interlocal service boundary agreement that's contemplated that you can enter into with Lake County under Part 2 of Chapter 171. If you go to Part 2 of Chapter 171, that language is mirrored directly in the ISBA that was already negotiated and approved by the city and by Lake County years ago. That ISBA also says, and I quote, "If you meet Part 1, a city may annex any property." So we do not have to go to Lake County for approval for annexation. It is entirely within your jurisdictional right to approve an annexation with contiguous properties, which we are. And we do not have to be urban in character because urban in character requirements come under Part 2 of Chapter 171, which again is inapplicable to our project both under Florida statutory law as well as under the interlocal service boundary agreement by which both you and Lake County are bound. The staff's basis for recommendation of approval, there's a bunch of reasons for recommending approval, but again, the competent substantial evidence, and the only competent substantial evidence that you'll probably hear on the record tonight is going to come from your professional staff, and it gives a recommendation for approval because we meet all of the Florida statutory requirements, we meet the policies under your comprehensive plan as well as under your code, and we are consistent with your growth management plan. In addition, we meet all of the requirements for a rezoning under your code and under your comprehensive plan as well. So we would request a recommendation tonight of approval. I'd ask for the opportunity to respond to any comments from the public, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Tara, for that presentation. We do appreciate the efforts you and the developer made in meeting with adjoining property owners and area residents. Like I said earlier, normally we would discuss this among the commission first. We did have some discussion in the first reading, so we'll go ahead and let the public speak at this time. I will remind you that comments are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anybody? Okay, please come to the podium. Okay.
Hello, my name is Scott Sattler, and I live off of East Dewey Robbins Road in Howey in the Hills, unincorporated. Appreciate the presentation. I'm just going to flow these two together also because I thought we were going to get to speak twice after each Whispering Hills and Hodges Cove, so I'm just going to do the whole thing now, if that's okay. In my opinion, the common goal in this process should be a path to unification, all parties committed to the best solution. It may also be my opinion, but we certainly don't want our rural lands to become someday as mismanaged as Leesburg is currently. The public education, which is below the national average in almost every category, and crime rate, which the FBI database ranks Leesburg in the bottom 3% of safest cities in America. Obvious areas for concern. Teardra mentioned 15 acres to the school board. Is that an elementary school, a middle school, a high school, or all three? All of which currently face major overcrowding issues except for your high school. You're 2% under your 100%. As to the direct impact to our area, the roads surrounding every direction of these developments are not sustainable to the increase in traffic the area will experience. Even with the latest concessions to flow traffic to Highway 27, this is not just gridlock we're talking about, but actual public safety on those roadways. There is no northbound exit to 27 from the turnpike, which will flow traffic right down Highway 19, then to East Dewey Robbins Road, then to South Dewey Robbins, to Dewey Robbins as the shortest route of travel back to Whispering Hills. And I'm just curious, by a show of hands from the commissioners, how many of you have ever been on East Dewey Robbins Road? Dewey Robbins? South Dewey? Okay. You know, for the rest of the commissioners that haven't been present on any one of those areas, it's really hard to vote for something like this if you've not actually ever physically been there. It's not as if we're against development. We all knew that at some point this would come. What we are against is not being able to decide how we merge urban and rural character, lifestyles, so as not to lose not to lose either of them and actually find a way to gain from both. You all here have as much responsibility to consider our concerns as we yours. Conservation design, in my opinion, by Randall Arndt, is probably the best way to bridge and to make all of this possible as we move forward. And you know, obviously, we all sat in here and watched the committee refuse to even pay attention to the presentation. And because, let's see, I watched the table, and nobody even turned around, maybe a couple times. You were so objective to the idea, which again, I think is the biggest bridge to combine urban and rural neighborhoods together. So I think you all should probably review that process in your future planning. It's fair, it's just, and everybody wins. I agree with the county commission in the fact that all of you can do better together and with the help of the rural citizens. As to the RPA, the ISBA is 2 years behind its review of every 5 years since it was established, which means it hasn't been reviewed at all. We stand behind removing the RPA from the ISBA, which should never have been included in the first place. The RPA should be held as it is stated in the existing comprehensive plan. 49 years of data, research, studies, and science that all suggest why it was given its original designation was to preserve and protect that portion of land against urban development. We're only asking for what is right and has been decided long before today's process. Hodges Reserve absolutely does not meet any requirement for annexation at this time. It is not comparable to Whispering Hills and is no way urban in character. And to top on that, there's been no concessions provided. When they were asked in the very first hearing, what was their plan B? There was none offered, and none has been made since. We do appreciate what has been done with Whispering Hills, but we don't feel like we're where we need to be, which is why we firmly object to the development of Hodges Reserve. Your consideration of the Yalaha Lake Apopka Rural Protected Area would be appreciated, as well as Randall Orange Conservation Design in your future planning. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, please come to the podium.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, just as a point of order, just so there's clarity, this is a public hearing. This is a public hearing on Whispering Hills. There, as Mr. Miller pointed out at the onset, there's an annexation, a land use, and a zoning portion to each of these annexations. So there's a 6A, B, C. Then that, and 6 is the item number on the agenda. Then there is another public hearing following the Whispering Hills on Hodges. And so then Hodges will go through the same process, ABC, annexation, land use, and zoning. So the members of the public and who came here tonight to participate in the public hearing will have opportunity to speak both on Hodges and Whispering Hills. So I would just, in your comments, just be cognizant of what you're petitioning against. I think just for the record, the last speaker spoke against Whispering Hills as well as Hodges, and he'll have opportunity. I would advise Mr. Mayor that he can come up again and speak on Hodges. So just, this is the Whispering Hills annexation portion of the public hearing.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you. My name is Joanna Mitchell. I am a resident in the affected area. Me and my husband reside on South Dewey Robbins Road. We own property there. We are not directly affected, but we will be directly affected mainly by the increased traffic in the area along all of Dewey Robbins Road, including South and East Dewey. Because as anyone who lives in the area knows, I know everybody keeps talking about everything going out towards 27, but anybody who resides in the area knows that from 27, you go down Dewey Robbins, you cut across South Dewey to East Dewey. That's your fastest way to get into 19, your fastest way to get to Claremont, your fastest way to get to Tavares. That's going to become a major thoroughfare, essentially. And we're talking about little tiny 2-lane country winding roads. So I want to put it on record that both my husband and I do strongly object to the annexation of Whispering Hills. I was going to address both, as my neighbor Scott did, but if we need to come up and say the exact same thing twice, we'll just come up and say the exact same thing twice, because both of these projects are completely incompatible with the area. Whispering Hills is not quite as bad as Hodges, but neither of them are compatible with the existing area. The including the present infrastructures that are there, as well as they both are in this rural protected area. And the intent and purpose of the enactment of the rural protection area was to exercise extraordinary care to uphold the rural nature of these areas and recognize this in all future land use developments. Both of these proposed developments are within the RPA, which is the Rural Protected Area boundary, and the goal is supposed to be protecting environmentally sensitive land, protection of equestrian and agrarian lifestyles, and also protection of wildlife. There are design techniques available that allow for responsible development. We're not against development. We understand development is going to happen, but there has to be responsible development. And while Whispering Hills has made some concessions, we believe there can be significant more. There need to be bigger setbacks, bigger green zones in between the existing developments to help protect not only the rights of the people who are attempting to develop the property, but you have to also remember not to infringe on the rights of property owners who bought property out here when it was a very rural area. Most people own 10, 12, 15, 20, 40 acres, and to put a multi-house, multi-family housing units so close to some of these properties is just not compatible with the areas whatsoever.
3 minutes, ma'am.
So, well, I just wanted to point out that as an attorney, I am an attorney, and I and my group, which is Citizens for Protection for Rural, we have hired a court reporter for today's hearing, or tonight's hearing, so that the record and our numerous objections can be clearly and properly preserved, so that if erroneous decisions are made here this evening, that we have a properly saved record for purposes of appeal. Thank you.
I just remind the public to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just wanted, before I get started here, I want to talk about the meetings that were held. Kim Cronin,
And your address.
6531 Dewey Robbins, Howie in the Hills. The meetings that were held with property owners adjacent to Whispering Hills, some of those were held in July. My family happened to be on vacation. We did attend one in August. We told them that we would like to have a meeting with our neighbors, also with them. We did share a couple of emails, and that was as far as it went. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So my family is affected by our property being directly adjacent to the proposed Whispering Hill development. I object to the annexation, the comprehensive plan amendments, and the rezoning. Whispering Hills development is inconsistent and incompatible with the surrounding areas. I would like to see this project be postponed to work towards larger buffers. We just heard that there were, I think, 20-foot buffers. I think that between horse trails and walking trails and golf trails, and that we should be able to have larger buffers than that. And I'd also like to see us create a transition between the Whispering Hills development in the rural neighborhoods all around the property, not just certain areas. We did our homework when we bought our property on Dewey Robbins Road in 1999. All of the property surrounding us was agricultural land, 1 house per 5 acres. Most of our roads were all clay roads at that time, something we thought we could adjust to very well. We purchased a 10-acre piece of property with a double-wide mobile on it. We were looking for acreage and something that was affordable. I heard one of you say that all of our houses out there are worth $500,000. Well, that's not true. We enjoyed the rural atmosphere, the lifestyle, and the pleasure of watching our grandchildren raise animals for 4-H to enter into the Lake County Fair. Since Hodges purchased our property, the only zoning change that we've seen or heard about was the RPA, Rural Protection Area. I am asking you to postpone this this vote tonight. I believe there needs to be more compromises with the rural families that are surrounding this property. Thank you.
My name is Vance Yoakum. As some of you know, I write the blog fiscalrangers.com. I've been to all 14 cities in the last 15 years covering political and local government issues, including the county and the school board. And I've had an opportunity to see the Lowndes representative talk before. So you notice there was a pattern there of them working with residents, and I think I would acknowledge that as that she did the same thing at Tavares, and then you compare it to the remarks that you hear about the Hodges developers, where they didn't compromise on anything. I think that tells you the difference between the type of developers that maybe you ought to seek. What I wanted to show you is that the school board has an annual concurrency committee meeting, and they create this map. This happened just a couple weeks ago at the school board. This cost me $20 because they wouldn't give it to me for free. And this shows all the developments in the Lake County area that are in progress or being planned. Okay, now unfortunately it doesn't show the traffic counts that are going to be generated, which is my main concern this year. I am going to be focusing on investigating how these traffic studies are developed. The fact that both of the proposals that you have here, they didn't have traffic studies in there. Said, well, we're going to get one later, but why don't you analyze the traffic now and look and see what's available? I recently saw one at another city where they calculated that the traffic was going to be at 29%, 97% capacity of the road. And that's before they put in a 600-unit apartment complex. That city council, Tavares, turned that unit down because it was just way out of line with the community. And I think that you need to develop a sense for the fact that, as has been mentioned already, and I've seen it in many other meetings like this, that people buy into these rural areas. Now, I'm not one. I live on a small lot, but it's on a canal. And they buy into these areas because they want the rural life. And what right does an adjoining property owner who has bought that 5 or 10 or 20 acre lot, what right do they have to sell out to a developer who then puts in 3 or 4 or 6 units per acre and completely inundate them with traffic? I come from Orange County,
3
California.
minutes, please. Or just remind you of 3 minutes.
And just let me finish the sentence here, is that I come from Orange County, California. If you go on the Google satellite view and you look at the rooftops, you'll see the entire county, and especially Huntington Beach, where I lived, and they are just all rooftops. But they plan for the roads. This county is not planned for the roads. They don't have the right-of-ways. You have winding roads among lakes, and you're going to have gridlock. And so do you want to be one of the people that is then causing gridlock for this county? This is kind of like the first stage. There's all these in the pipeline. And in my view, they're ignoring traffic analysis reports, or they're getting biased traffic analysis reports, and they are not talking about with real numbers. Thank you.
Hi there, Lori Brown.
Give you $20 for that.
Please do listen to my neighbors. By the
Ma'am,
way,
we just need your name and address.
Lori Brown on Dewey Robbins. Believe it or not, Leesburg, Florida is number 7 for the crime. That's kind of scary. Do you guys all live in developments in the city of Leesburg? Just yes or no, it's fine. You won't even do that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I do.
No, you won't even do that. Okay. To me, when is enough is enough? We're asking you to please leave our area alone. Just, when will there be any country land left if you continue to build? You're slowly encroaching on county land. When will there be any country left? So just please listen to my neighbors. We like living in the country. You guys might like living in developments. We don't. That's all I'm trying to say. Thank you.
My name is Terry Blessing, and I live on Blue Sink Road, right off of Number 2 Road. I appreciate the man with the traffic study because I challenge each one of you to review traffic studies before you vote, because that didn't happen one time. I do support Whispering Hills in their concept plan, and I want to make it clear that development's coming. I like it because of the fact that they have incorporated some economic development and not just rooftops. They are trying to listen. I'm not sure that we are totally ready for a yes vote tonight. I'm very disappointed because I have an email showing that they were going to work to reduce their number from 2,900 down to 2,100, and she presented to you 2,900 again. And that bothers me a lot because I feel in my heart that if you're going to stand up here and you're going to communicate with the residents, then you have to follow through. Do I appreciate the fact that they took their entrances off of Number 2 Road? Yes. One thing I would also like to see included in the PUD language is the mass grading. They're going to try not to do mass grading. I'd like that to be put, that there won't be mass grading, that it will be reviewed before mass grading occurs in that PUD language. The reason I say that is because another developer stood here before you all and said they weren't going to take down the trees, that they were going to leave these beautiful historic trees along Number 2 Road, and every last one of them is gone. It wasn't in the PUD language, and they were able to come and say it just didn't fit as part of our plan. So, that said, I do support Whispering Hills with some alterations. I would like to see a better number than their 2,900 because I know that they can get it down. And I do ask you to please do your due diligence. Don't just believe a developer. You need to really review and make sure the information and the documentation, especially these traffic studies, is correct. Because as the gentleman said before me, I'm just not sure what they are doing when they do the traffic studies. I'm not sure the design. And yes, I have communicated with MPO, so I am very familiar with that process as well. Thank you so very much, and I appreciate the time.
Hello, my name is Michelle Cronin-Miller, and I live at 6533 Dewey Robbins Road, and we are affected by Whispering Hills. We live across the lake from them, the lake where my children fish. We dirt bike, we raise cows, we raise pigs and chickens and rabbits for 4-H in our local community. My family is opposed to this. From what I could understand in all of what was said by the attorney, I didn't hear one thing about public safety. I didn't hear about how you were gonna have fire departments or increase your police department on that side of town. You're gonna add us in. You also have to add us in on your city fire department and your city police department and your EMS. And Lake County EMS is already stretched thin enough, so I don't see how we're gonna add more people in that area. I also noticed in her map showing all of the subdivisions that are around there, there's nothing to the south of that. She couldn't show the south. It's all in the north. Plantation has been there for years. All of those 55 and up communities have been there for years. And they're south of where she is. It is not working in our rural area.
My name is Lydia Cook. My address is 26100 Serenity Lane, Howey in the Hills, Florida. I object to the annexation, comprehensive plan amendments, and rezoning as they are inconsistent and incompatible with the surrounding areas and present infrastructure. There are only 3 rural protection areas in Lake County. Whispering Hills and Hodges are both in the Yulaha Lake Apopka Rural Protection Area. We live in the Yulaha Lake Apopka Rural Protection Area of Lake County. RPAs are areas specifically designed on the Lake County future land use map as areas where the land use is intended to remain rural. The designation demonstrates that the county government recognizes the rural areas are not just underdeveloped areas waiting for next urban or suburban housing developments to occur, but are communities where residents who choose the rural lifestyle and purchase and build their homes on large lots ranging in size from 5 acres to 40 acres or more. Many families have lived in the area for generations and passed acreage on to children and grandchildren. Rural areas provide open space, aquifer recharge, carbon reduction, wildlife habitat, and many beautiful vistas. Green space and nature provide mental health benefits and can reduce stress. Rural residents support local and regional economies with their purchases related to construction, farm equipment, pickup trucks, fencing, riding mowers, restaurants, local markets, and many other typical necessities. Families who live in the RPAs embrace open space and clean air, appreciate wildlife, and enjoy the many activities associated with wildlife. Many residents are local business owners or working families who choose to travel to their employment locations over living in busy cities or suburban environments. We and several of our neighbors have horses, some have ponies and chickens. There's llamas and pygmy goats. We have lots of wildlife in this area, which include coyotes, alligators, egrets, ibis, blue herrings, sand cranes, owls, and eagles. We are in awe every day of our surroundings. We would like to ask that the decision for Whispering Hills and Hodges Reserve be postponed until they meet the criteria of the RPA. The infrastructure in this area is also not sufficient to handle these developments, and no plans in the near future for any improvements.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Shelley, 9710 East Dewey Robbins Road, Howey in the Hills. I'm also with the Citizens for Preservation of Rural. I attended the joint meeting last week between the city and the county. I understand the concerns of the city. I understand the city's desire and need to grow. I do think we still have a wide divide between the city's desires and the adjacent rural community. I believe we all need to continue to work together to provide a balance between the city's needs and the adjacent community. I'm sure you know that for the past 50, maybe the past 100 years, our rural areas were just considered areas waiting to develop. But now our rural lands are bona fide land uses. You've got residents on large lots, and as such, these residents deserve the same consideration with respect to adjacent land use as a resident on a quarter-acre lot, a half-acre lot, commercial land use, or industrial land use. You use your comprehensive plan policies to provide and to ensure consistency and compatibility with adjacent land uses. And this is about the entire community, not just the neighbors that are adjacent, because the entire community will be affected. If you look to the northeast, the east, and the southeast, we have over 12 to 14 square miles of rural residents interspersed in those areas. So they are a bona fide land use, just like any other land use, quarter-acre lot, half-acre lot. So please consider that. I greatly appreciate what the Whispering Hills folks have done thus far. We're not there yet. I do believe, unfortunately, there really has been no significant reduction in density, which is really what's going to hurt our area. No reduction in density until last week. So they started so high and so intense that any reduction appears significant. So please consider that. I don't believe we have a balance yet in the overall density. So I ask you for more consideration for that. And again, if you look to the northeast, the east, and the southeast, 12 to 14 square miles of rural, large lot residents interspersed in that area. And we're talking about within the rural protection area. We have a line drawn around the area, and our community is asking, keep the integrity of that rural protection area. You can have multifamily outside that area, just like you have Legacy, just like you have the Maclier. That is not in the rural protection area. So we're asking to maintain the integrity of the rural protection area. I'd just like to mention strive. Strive does not mean achieve. I appreciate that the Whispering Hills folks want to strive for some things, but strive does not mean achieve, but go for it. I would also like to comment just one quickly on the new revised map here. The area between G and F sort of dead ends into a green space on number 2 road. I would have concern that if you have 3,000 residents just way up here trying to get out of this subdivision, you're going to have 3,000 or 4,000 residents wanting to turn that little green space into a connection to number 2 road. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but unless you have some really tight conservation rule that prevents that from happening, you're going to have a lot of people requesting that. My other comment is, and I'll just end up quickly, I am concerned that the essential elements of law are not being considered regarding annexing laws, annexing areas that are rural and are not rural, that are urban in character. The ISBA rules require that you annex lands that are urban in character, and I disagree with the, Part 1, Part 2 ISBA. There's a lot of moving parts in that discussion, so I'll let others argue about that. I would also like to point out that the county submitted a letter. Has the county letter been submitted for the record? I would like to submit the county letter. I have it here. And the county...
Please wrap it up.
Okay, the county, I'd like to submit the county, make sure that, I don't know if anybody from the county is here, but they have a lot of similar concerns that they mentioned at the meeting, at the joint meeting last week. So thank you for considering that, and I hope we can have more meaningful reductions in density and a more meaningful concessions for the adjacent community. Thank you. And I have written comments.
Hello, my name is Christine Didana. I live on Lime Avenue in Yalaha. Didana. I live on Lime Avenue in Yalaha. I live on a smaller piece of property in a home that was built in 1950. So I would like to start by saying that the remark about the rural utopia that we were trying to live in was particularly hurtful to me at the last meeting that I attended, because I live on about a half an acre in an older home, and I didn't do anything to impact the land except for to upkeep my property and make friends with my neighbors. I think that sometimes I get that development is coming. I appreciate that, I respect that. I think that maybe the proposed changes in Whispering Hills is better, but I do not think that it is best. I also think that many times, and when I moved over from Orange County. And I watched some of the development that went over and took something special and unique and made it the same as everything else. And I think that when you're talking about a rural protection area, I just think taking something special and turning it into the same, as you can see if you drive in any direction, turning it into some Lake County version of the Villages, isn't what the people who live in that area are particularly yearning for. And I also think with regards to the traffic, that the traffic studies haven't taken into account what it's going to do once the school buses and everyone's mom and dad driving their elementary and middle school children to school is going to do in terms of traffic flow. As someone who has worked in an elementary school and saw that literally over half of the children got picked up and dropped off by someone, I can tell you right now that if there's a school over there, there's going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of extra cars that haven't been accounted for yet, on top of the buses that will be going back and forth over there. Just food for thought. Thank you for your time.
Are there any other public comments?
Lauren Howell. I live at 6514 Moggsbog Road. First off, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak and voice my objections to these proposed changes. I would like to quickly go over how the roads are not up to standards that will be needed for the influx of all these new proposed developments, or the fact that the schools cannot handle the influx of new kids. The schools that my children go to, and there is no plan to build or fix the existing schools. It is also disappointing to know that the proposed fix to this was a small parcel of land to be donated by the developer. That 15 acres is not going to build 3 new schools, as well as the potential impact fees paid by this development would not cover the cost of the 3 new schools, which needs to happen. It was also stated by one of the council members that there was less kids in the school than when he went there. Well, that's because the schools are so terrible. Parents, if able, place their kids in other institutions. I understand that they're Lake County schools and you may not have a direct influence on funding, but your decision will have a direct impact on the quality of these schools. These, along with a myriad of other issues that have been stated in previous meetings, should be enough to not approve such a development. And since I have limited time, I won't go into all of them now. I would instead like to focus on another couple of points of contention. The figure given for the cost of one of these new built houses is unrealistic. If you can find a 3-2 bedroom house with land in a community like this one for around the figure, let me know. I'll certainly buy them all. I hope the council wasn't misled into thinking this would be a workforce housing because simple math says otherwise. In the same vein of misleading statements, we have the supposed concessions that were made. The main one being the issue of having the development access number 2 road. As per their own traffic engineer, this would be very problematic as well as expensive. This decision was decision to not use number 2 road wasn't made for one of concern of the community. It was made for practical and financial reasons, as well as the decreased density along number 2 road that would access it. Too many trips, can't put that many cars down there. The only reason they reduced that density. Once again, I feel that the council has been misled by this. In closing, I would like to discuss matters that are personal to my situation in particular. The first one being statements made by the council member stating that they are making the area urban by living here and chopping down trees and pouring concrete. Well, I didn't chop down a tree or pour an ounce of concrete when I moved here. In fact, I have made a concerted effort to replace non-native foliage with Florida native plants. How would a council member know the residents in this area have built or kept their houses, their homesteads? Statements like this, I believe, reveal a troubling bias of council against residents of rural areas. Finally, the property directly behind mine with the site of some of the heaviest commercially developed area. In fact, the plan is to put a multi-story hotel directly behind my residence. Their plan to build a wall separating their property from mine. I can say with confidence this wall isn't going to do much to block a multi-story hotel. My children play there. I don't believe it's right to be expected to have to endure random strangers to be able to view my kids at all hours of days and night. So my simple question for you, the council, would be, by hand raising, how many of you would like to have a giant hotel in your backyard?
Okay, it's my understanding it's not appropriate to address the commission with those kind of questions and address us individually.
So that's your statement that I can't ask a question to the council?
That's my statement, yes.
Okay, that's as long as it's recorded. Thank you.
No, please understand, we're trying to give everybody in the public a chance to speak, but it's not appropriate to come up here and ask the commissioners individual questions or as a group. This is not the place for that.
Good evening. My name is Ron Robinson. I live at 8008 Sergeant Pepper Drive, Howie in the Hills. And my wife and I object to the Whispering Hills annexation comprehensive plan amendments and rezoning as they are inconsistent and incompatible with the surrounding areas and present infrastructure. You know, RPA stands for protection. Okay? I mean, it wouldn't be saying rural protection area if it didn't mean that we need to protect that area. And this body is not doing that. And when the attorney said that this body met with with Lake County, that was only after Lake County at the last minute, knowing that this meeting was going to take place for a second reading and a final reading, that you decided to meet with them. And I think that was planned by this body. So until this body responds to the letter that is coming from Lake County, I believe that you need to suspend and not have a vote on this tonight. Thank you.
Any other members of the public like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Reggie Thomas. I live at 7850 Dewey Robbins Road. I've spoken to this body before and addressed my concerns. You reap what you sow. When you're looking at these multiple developments that are coming up, and no concern is given to the fact that these schools are going to be or already overcrowded. The people that move into these communities that are going to be spending $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 with children that need to go to these schools, they're going to lose their minds when they find out that you, as a body, decided to go ahead and build these subdivisions and you didn't address the schools. There is a direct correlation between the property value of someone's home and the schools in their communities. My wife and I are multiple homeowners in Ocala, in Maryland, in Virginia. It's what we built over the years. One of the things that we note is that wherever we bought property, the schools did generally well. Leesburg schools rank on greatschools.org at a number 2 out of 10. 2 out of 10. They're horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Got multiple educators in my family. And the thing is that you gotta address that. The development is fine, but don't do it at the cost of people's children. Thank you.
If there are no more comments, we'll turn to the commission for your comments.
I had a couple of questions for Ms. Tedrow. I'd mentioned at the first reading wanting to place a restriction in the annexation agreement on the max amount of age-restricted housing, and I know it's not in there yet. Did you have an idea of what you think the minimum that you're looking for?
So our plan shows ALF units as 250. ALF units are what's shown on the plan as our age-restricted housing that we have now. Was there an additional amount?
No, so I want to restrict, so if 250 is what's on the plan,
Mhm.
then I'm just going to, when we get time closer to voting, want to put an amendment that says on the annexation agreement, the max amount of allowed age-restricted housing is 250 units.
Sure.
So someone can't later convert this into an all 65 plus.
The whole community,
Right.
understood,
So
understood.
j-
Yep,
just
so the
so it
only thing
matches
on the
what the
plan
intent
is the 250 are what we show on 15.75 acres, and we're happy to have
Okay.
the restrictions say that the maximum age-restricted housing will be constrained to what is shown on the residential tract summary on the plan.
Okay. All right, thanks. And then, just make sure I understand this correctly. So, because you have one access to Highway 27 now.
Correct.
And the second access, that's something you're still negotiating, that you don't have legal access to quite yet.
Correct. We have two alternative developers who are directly adjacent to us. I told you one of
Right.
them, let me see if I can pull this up so everyone can see where I'm showing the access. Access 1 and Access 2. Windmill Road is a public right-of-way that does lead up to our property, so we would have, if we couldn't get it from any of the other adjacent developers, one of whom as of today reached out and actively asked us to work with them on getting that cross-access to 27. If we weren't able to get that, we've talked to your staff, and because of your comprehensive plan policies, your staff would be able to withhold permits from our adjacent developers if they didn't give us cross-connectivity and access under your code and comp plan. So we can't build out our phase until we have that access
Right,
provided.
and that's what I just want to be clear, is you can't build this whole development if you don't get a second access.
Right, so that's the concurrency, yeah,
Right.
and that's the issue. Unless we can mitigate for impacts to, for example, schools, unless there's enough seats or we're able to provide for mitigation for capital improvements, by the way, in addition to the 15 acres that were donated, and that number came from the request of the school board, it's where we came
Right.
up with 15. But similar to roads and transportation networks, you can't get COs if we haven't mitigated or built the infrastructure in place for those homes or the commercial component. So that is part of our later phase, that second access plan, and we are going to be able to get it through a couple different means, whether it's having to build out Windmill bigger, which I doubt that's going to be the case, but it's likely going to be between one of two different developers next to us and their properties.
All right, okay, those are my only questions. I don't know if other commissioners have questions before I just go into comments.
I have a couple. This subdivision going to be done in how many phases?
We're showing 3 phases.
Okay, so how many phases are you proposing you could do before you have the second access?
That's going to be based on the amount of vehicular traffic that comes. I can have our traffic engineer, we had to run some numbers, and it's about what the roads would be able to withstand if everything just goes to US 27 from the property. And just to clarify, that road that we show that goes through G and F up to Area M, which is number 2, that is an emergency access point required under code for secondary emergency access, and that's just for parcel M houses to come to and from, so it's a key card access. Not everybody's able just to come in and out of that, only those 41 residents that we show. But we can pull up some numbers that where you would likely trigger needing that secondary access to be built. We, of course, would like it done as soon as possible, which is why we already offered to pay for improvement
Yeah, I would like to
costs.
know that. And also, when you speak about age restricted, you said age restricted, and I think you said ALF. To me, that there's a difference between the two. Is there
Sure.
ALF in this subdivision?
It's an so we have an assisted living facility
okay.
proposed, but we don't have additional age-restricted communities proposed.
Okay,
From
so
the
you-
beginning, it was age-targeted in some respects, but there is no age-restricted outside of what an ALF would be.
Okay, and you're saying that's 250 units?
Right. That's what's shown on the concept plan, so we're happy to constrain it to age-restricted only as depicted on the
Yeah.
residential tract summary.
And let me ask you another question. Speaking to one of the gentleman's concerns, was about a hotel or something in his backyard or something. I mean, is there commercial development being proposed that's going to be around residential property, or is the commercial all pretty much oriented towards 27?
So predominantly, our commercial is towards 27. You can see directly
Yes.
adjacent in red where Access 1 is. The Village Town Center that we showed you the rendering of on the first slide in my presentation is around that larger body of water in the center of our project. Somebody had mentioned that we have 20-foot buffers. In Section 9C of the PUD, it's actually a minimum 50-foot
I
planting.
thought it was 50,
So that's in
yes.
addition to our jogging trails and everything else. That portion of property that we show on Area L, I went and did a measurement of it because there was a request by somebody to give them a 300-foot buffer there. Well, the property's about 300 feet wide in that little strip. So when we show what is a roadway taking us out, in addition to a 50-foot setback, 24 feet of road, curb, gutter, sidewalk, jogging trail, we don't know if we can even put any commercial right in that little area. It's probably a small village center supportive. Anything like a hotel component truly makes the most sense up towards US 27 for that accessibility onto that roadway network. So some of this just comes in the design, but there is an allowability to have a hotel on the site.
Okay, on the site, but I mean.
In the commercial areas that are shown in red. So that could be around the lake, buffered by C, D, E, H. But again, where you see the 300-foot wide property, I just haven't seen a lot of hotels built on a site that's only 300 feet wide and still has a roadway and 50-foot buffer and everything, the 50-foot setback from a wetland. So we're probably down to about 90 feet of buildable area right there. So it's going to be quite constrained. I doubt we could get a hotel there, but that's the only area right there, L, that is adjacent to a property that is not within our project boundary.
Okay. So there's nothing in the PUD that would limit the height of that?
So your commercial development standards under your city code would limit it for the hotel specifically, and I can pull where you have it in your PUD as well. Was there an additional question while I'm looking for that one?
No, I don't think so. I just wanted to, I mean, I know we have the LDRs on height limitation. I just don't know if it was being reduced through the PUD.
Do you want to provide an
I
answer?
believe our height restriction is 40 feet.
Yeah, I want to make sure I don't say anything incorrect on the record for that. Yeah, it's a maximum the commercial development standards are maximum 3-story. And on any commercial track too, so in addition to the roadway setback from the wetland jurisdictional boundary line, 50-foot setback from the northern property line, that area would also be required to have 20% open space. So that's really a very limited buildable area on that portion of the project. But it is, under your C3 standards, that would be a 3-story building height limitation.
Okay. And the last question was?
The traffic?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so we did look at the traffic in terms of, Jodel Zaballero, VHB. Jodel Zaballero, VHB, 225 East Robinson Street, Orlando, Florida. We did look at an interim phase 1, and basically before the end of phase 1, they would have to construct the secondary access. It's not only just from a accessibility to US 27, but also as an emergency access. So you would need to provide it for the number of homes, and it's about 1,000 single-family homes that was included as part of that phase, interim phase.
So with 1,000 homes off of one ingress and egress? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
before the
saying?
1,000 homes, yes.
Okay.
And I don't know what the configuration of access, that first access is. It's a 4-lane, it is a 4-lane.
Yeah, it comes in 4 and then goes to
4
2.
lanes from US 27 for the access, first access point.
Would there, I mean, I know this is an FDOT question, but, I mean, are the intersections going to be, they're going to be traffic light and?
They would require traffic signalization and likely dual left turn lanes into the site, a right turn lane northbound from US 27, as well as dual lefts out of the site.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, you're proposing the phase 1 or phase 2 would include possibly 1,000 homes off the one ingress and egress before the second one went in. Is that correct? Okay.
Commissioners, any other comments?
Yeah, a question with regard to the buffers. Many people voiced some concern that the projected 50-foot buffer would not be enough. Has there been any consideration to increasing that to a 75-foot or 100-foot buffer? I know the county was also very vocal in their letter about that.
So we have in some of the areas, again, when neighbors asked us to, we increased buffers rather significantly by providing 5-acre tracts that were 2-acre buildable, the rest open space. So there are some significant setbacks all along the eastern boundary of our property. If there is the request for a 75-foot buffer instead, that could be inclusive of an equestrian trail or our jogging trails?
Yes.
With landscaping? Well, so with I would assume open space and equestrian trails and walking trails, as well as landscape plantings, would be part of the buffer we're talking about. Okay, because it wouldn't be a random buffer sidewalk in the middle of a golf course along the perimeter. Okay,
Correct.
Got it. So, which I would assume, yes, so we, happy to do that. And if there weren't other questions, would I have an opportunity to address just a couple of things that were brought up by the residents now, or did you want me to wait?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that was brought up were RPA standards, and so I just want to make sure, I know again, if we are annexed, all of the city's policies are what apply, but there are some RPA standards that I spent a couple hours analyzing, that assuming we were in Lake County and the RPA standards applied to us, what would that look like from a development standpoint and us meeting those RPA standards? So this is very small font, but just so everybody understands, the RPA does not say no development whatsoever, and then it sort of is a conflict, because Randall Arndt says you don't have to decrease density, right? You can design a project in a way that allows you to keep density. So it's sort of a no density, but also put a bunch of density, just give us a bunch of buffers. So in working between the RPA standards and kind of this nebulous conservation design I've heard a lot of people talk about, I went and looked at what that actually means. So RPA standards talk about things like 2-lane county roads. With our redesign, we're not widening any county roads around us. Our interior roads might at some points closest to 27 be 4-laned, but the rest of our interior roads are 2-laned, and again, we're not changing exterior county roads, so we're not impacting them in a way that would take them from being 2-lane to anything above that. And RPA also says you should maximize buffers and open space and provide opportunities for passive recreation. Again, that 35% open space is similar to what the county's rural transition future land use and their rural future land use designation already contemplate. Protection of common open space in perpetuity by easement, plat, or similar recorded binding instrument. Our PUD requires wetlands on the project be identified by a jurisdictional wetland boundary. Each wetland has to be placed on a suitable map, signed and sealed by a surveyor and submitted as part of the site plan application process. The PUD also provides specific development standards regarding wetland areas, such as a 50-foot minimum setback from a wetland boundary line, an average upland buffer of 25 feet to be naturally vegetated, and only stormwater allowed in upland buffer areas. To the extent practical, wetlands have to be placed in a permanent conservation easement running in favor of and enforceable by the Water Management District or another legal entity. Such conservation easement shall require that wetlands be maintained in their natural and unaltered state. Wetlands cannot be included in any platted lot. So your staff did put a lot of thoughtful detail about that type of wetland in our PUD already. RPA talks about maintaining, enhancing, and protecting corridors for wildlife movement. Our PD and the PUD already require maximized buffers. We maximize them a little more tonight. Also talks about providing significant open space, and our PUD already requires a wildlife management plan to be submitted to the city as part of our site plan application process. RPA says minimize alteration of terrain, and that is something that we've also looked at and proposed, but your code does require that if you have to grade for stormwater or a road, of course, for that type of infrastructure we would, but this site is being designed to try to minimize those impacts on the natural terrain. And in terms of mass grading and clear cutting trees, our PUD already has a specific condition that says we have to tree survey the entire property, submit that to your staff to look at specimen, heritage, or protected trees, and no trees can be pulled down unless and until your staff makes the determination that they are not a specimen, heritage, or protected tree, and then in which case we'd have to go through a permitting process for any type of tree removal, so it would not be allowable just clear cutting. RPA says use native landscaping. Our PUD already requires all landscaped areas be irrigated and designed to meet water-wise and Florida-friendly landscaping. The use of St. Augustine grass or other varieties of grass which require significant amounts of water are already prohibited. More drought-tolerant grasses are permitted. Water conservation requirements are already in place under the PUD too. The developer also has seek to strive for that Audubon certification. Those are the literal RPA standards. So I think it's important when we just generally talk about the RPA, what do the standards actually say, and how is this project, though not legally bound to, meeting those standards anyway? And these are the things I believe your staff took into consideration on the front end when they wrote these PUD standards. In addition, when it comes to county conservation design standards, the exact same things, which I won't repeat myself, but it says protection of common open space, wetlands, through easement. Preservation of wildlife, natural habitat, and an environmental study is required. Maintenance and enhancement and protection of wildlife corridors, minimal site disturbance, a wetland assessment, use of best management practices for native landscaping, implementation of water conservation techniques, preservation of dark sky, which I will say our dark sky standards are better than what is even articulated under those county conservation design standards. Talks about central water and sewer facility connections, which we have, installation of reclaimed, use of water conservation devices, and implementation of best management practices. These are literally already codified in our PUD. And I don't blame anybody for not taking the time to go read those exact conservation policies, the exact RPA policies, cross-reference them with the PUD back to your city's code, and then look at our project design, because it takes a lot of time and effort. But that's why your staff professionally put that together on the front end, and we do really meet a lot of these issues that were addressed tonight. A lot of folks continue to say compatibility and consistency. And I think it's important that we don't just use buzzwords when we're talking about compatibility and consistency. If you were to evaluate a project, again, standards of evaluation are things like competent and substantial evidence. So when we just say it's incompatible or it's inconsistent, Florida statutory law under section 163-3164 defines compatibility as a condition in which land uses or conditions can coexist in relative proximity to each other in a suitable fashion over time. This is why things like buffers and transitions are important. This is why we put our density closer towards 27. This is why we redesigned our plan with some of those issues in mind after we received that type of feedback, specifically for compatibility and consistency. What Florida statutory law and your growth management plan do not say is that you can only put exact uses next to each other. It literally wouldn't function from a planning standpoint. That's why you have to incorporate proper planning techniques, which you rely on your professional staff and their opinion in coming up with these types of plans, and that's exactly what we've done in our project. So just saying you don't want anything other than what you have in your backyard is never going to work, and no city could ever be planned if that was the case. And I would also argue that there is already commercial on the east side of 27, so truly incompatibility and inconsistency exists as of today, and if that is the case, then we are entirely compatible and entirely consistent because there's already commercial development on the east side of 27. So it is almost an impossible standard that some folks have set up, because I truly believe no matter how many times we meet and talk, we would never have come to a point where everybody would have been pleased. And that's why decisions like tonight are constrained by things like Florida statutory law, your code of ordinances, and your growth management plan, all of which only our project has put anything on the record that we have met. You've heard a lot of opposition, which unfortunately did not come with competent and substantial evidence to support the opposition, and I can fully appreciate that these are things that people truly believe and care about, but we are also constrained by the law and the considerations that we make when determining whether to support a project or not. I believe my client has done a lot with this project in trying to come up with a plan that can be the best for what we have out here. Something is going to get developed on this property, and I am confident that what we have come up with is going to be the best development, not only for the area, but also for the city of Leesburg in the short term and the long term. And I think you will truly be proud of an approval decision if we were fortunate enough to get one tonight. And I am happy to answer any other questions you have, and I appreciate your time and consideration. And I'll provide the letter as well as our traffic study into the record as well to your city clerk.
Any other comments? Are we amending this approval? I guess I'm looking at you, Commissioner Roebuck. The 250, is that in the PUD right now, or are you amending it?
It's not. I was gonna want to make a motion amendment, and I do have some other general comments. I just wanted to make sure everyone got a chance to ask questions.
Okay, and so we're going to be amending it on the 250, and I guess I was unclear on
Yeah.
Did you agree to a 75-foot buffer?
We did, and so that would be a 75, let me see what specific section that would be. So that would be section 9C1 of the PUD, would say a minimum 75-foot wide buffer.
Is that the entire development? I mean,
Yeah, because it goes on to say.
I know some areas are even more than that already.
Yeah, it's on the property line of all areas which share a common border with property around us. So,
Okay, thank you. I know that was important to the county.
Correct. So that would be that change there. And then I think to make the motion easier, it would be under section 3. I guess you would add section 3C2, that the residential tract summary for the ALF units shall be the maximum number of age-restricted units in the development.
Help me out, Commissioner Roebuck. I think his concerns were just keeping this where it was not an age-restricted community. I'm
Right.
not even sure we were making it ALF. I think you just said 250 in general.
Yeah, but if they're okay with the ALF, we can do it to the ALF. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You're
Thank
welcome
you.
to stay at the podium. We may have to bring you back.
Okay.
Sure. I think Commissioner Roebuck has more comments.
Yeah, just to address some of the comments from the public. The $500,000 housing comment from the workshop, just to be clear, I was not intended to be directed at existing inventory. That comment was that if you built a new development with one house per 1 acre with new houses, that you're not going to sell it for less than $500,000. In fact, I think it's a low number there. The comments on the existing residents' impact on the rural protection area that someone took, I think, offense to. Just be clear, that wasn't from any of us. That was from a county commissioner. And then for schools, because schools always get talked about every time there's a new development, is that, one, we don't fund schools on the city commission. We don't do that. We do care about our schools. And the only way that new schools get built is with new development. A new school will never be built if there's no new development, because impact fees from new development are the funding source for new schools. That number is set by the school board, not by us, based on studies that they have to do. Now, Leesburg residents do contribute a lot to schools. So last year, Leesburg residents, because everyone, and county residents, but if you just take Leesburg residents, property tax, they sent about $11.6 million to the school, and that number goes up with new development. So we are funding the schools through our residents and through the impact fees, so two separate funding sources. When we talk about roads, I absolutely agree with you that we're not spending enough money on roads. It's been a big issue of mine. Unfortunately, again, that when we talk about county roads, that is Lake County. And until this year, Lake County spent $2 million of their general fund on roads. And that's fantastic. The problem is that's the first time in over 30 years they spent a dime of the general fund money on roads. So if you have a problem with roads, I would suggest that you go and complain to the county commission. I know I certainly do frequently. And that needs to be addressed. But again, we don't do that. The development, Lake County, Leesburg citizens send a little over $8.5 million every year to the county. They don't provide us with police. They don't provide us with fire. They don't provide us with recreation. So it'd be nice if they spent some of that money on roads. I agree that Whispering Hills is not workforce housing. We've done some other workforce housing projects. This is a different level of housing. This is going to be certainly more expensive, but I think provides something that we don't have currently in Lake County, or in Leesburg. Then let's see. It was brought up at the workshop, but maybe not everyone was there. I did go check this. If you go to, it's a site maintained by the state of Florida, fnai.org, and it tells you about the conservation land, because we get lots of comments about there's not going to be any rural land or protected land left. So 34% of all land, dry land in Lake County is in permanent conservation, can never be developed. That's mostly a combination, about half and half federal and state lands, and then a very small percentage of private lands. Doesn't include lakes. If you include lakes, it's 46%. So we're never going to become Orlando. Orange County is 17% for comparison, half of Lake County, and that can never change. Traffic studies, developers are required to do traffic studies. We don't set the criteria. They don't set the criteria. Dan Miller from planning can come in and explain how, if that's needed, but whatever those studies say is what they have to do. And I think a lot of the disconnect comes in that they don't have to bring existing roads that have problems. They don't have to fix that, right? Because it's not their fault that the county has gone 30 years without spending money on roads. They have to pay for the the impact that they are going to have, the additional impact. But that's not something that we set. We're already providing fire to that area. That's why we have the ISBA. Is a big reason is we provide about half of the fire calls to that area. Obviously, we'll be hiring more police officers if this subdivision gets built. And this was brought up, but everyone likes this Randall Arndt conservation design. But a key component from the county's presentation is doesn't reduce density, 1 for 1. So if you're going to take this subdivision this size and put this density on 25% of it, you're talking like, I don't know, 6 units an acre or more, potentially after you build the roads and other infrastructure necessary. The only way you can do that is multi-story, so you're talking about apartments and condos, and if people hate this development, you should hear people when we talk about apartments. It's, nobody likes that. And then, those are all of my comments.
Okay, any other comments? So,
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, were you talking to the audience or the commission? I apologize. One of our residents is a senior and was not able to get up here, and can I just submit this for the record? Their letter for the
yes, ma'am,
record?
that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you so much, I apologize for the interruption.
Thank you.
So to move forward, do we need to amend? What do you need?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to amend 9C1 to a minimum 75-foot wide buffer and add section 3C2 stating that the residential tract summary for the ALF units shall be the maximum number of age-restricted units in the development.
Second.
Okay. So we'll vote on that amendment and then come back to 6A1. So roll call.
Commissioner Bury?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Connell?
Yes.
Commissioner Roebuck?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Commissioner ready to vote on 6A1? Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Connell?
Yes.
Commissioner Roebuck?
Yes.
Commissioner Bury?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Would someone please introduce 6A2?
Introduce and ask to read the title only.
An ordinance amending the future land use map of the comprehensive plan of the city of Leesburg, Florida, changing the future land use map designation of certain property containing 1,088 plus minus acres from Lake County Rural to City of Leesburg neighborhood mixed use for property generally located east of US Highway 27, north of Dewey Robbins Road, and south of County Road 48, as legally described in sections 24 and 25, Township 20 South, Range 24 East, and sections 20, 29, 30, 31, and 32, Township 20 South, Range 25 East, Lake County, Florida, and providing an effective date.
Motion for approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Any comments, commission? If no comments, I'll turn to the public. Any comments? Roll call.
Commissioner Connell?
Yes.
Commissioner Roebuck?
Yes.
Commissioner Bury?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Would someone please introduce 6A3?
Introduce and recommend read by title only.
An ordinance of the city of Leesburg, Florida, changing the zoning on approximately 1,088 plus minus acres from Lake County A agriculture to City of Leesburg PUD planned unit development to allow for mixed-use development for property generally located east of US Highway 27, north of Dewey Robbins Road, and south of County Road 48, as legally described in sections 24 and 25, Township 20 South, Range 24 East, and sections 20, 29, 30, 31, and 32, Township 20 South, Range 25 East, Lake County, Florida, and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments from the commission? Comments from the public?
I'll take advantage of that. Vance Yoakum again. I run the blog fiscalrangers.com. A few additional points based upon the discussion I heard already. One is that I've seen reports, and I'm going to prepare a collection of them, that says that cities, when they annex new property and the homes, they are obligated to provide certain services. Well, then those studies say that the cities always lose on the new homes because they have to spend more on the new services, whether it's roads or it's other things that then they collect in revenues. And that one of the tricks that cities use, and I've seen, like, say, Tavares has $90 million in debt that they've run up, is to go and borrow money to pay for services that then is taxed against everybody in the entire city to help subsidize the homes that have just been built and that are not paying what they call, what you might say is a fair share. So I think you ought to keep that in mind. I'm going to gather more information and I'm going to send it out to all the city councils, because I think that this whole process of approving these annexations is rife with loopholes and areas that I think are harming the citizens and the taxpayers, and maybe it isn't always out. You just may not have been educated, so we'll try that. A major problem in the rural county residents is that they can't vote for your positions. So you sit here and you're making a decision that's going to impact the rural county residents, and yet they can't vote to throw you out when you make those decisions. And I think that's unethical in my view. I mean, I know the state statutes probably dictate it. Who knew? You know, I don't think that you should have the right to approve these if those people can't vote for your positions. And I think that people live in an ISBA that can be affected by annexations should be able to vote for your positions. And let's see, here's another one. Yeah, you collect property taxes on the comment related to the roads, and the county gets the impact fees and is responsible for it. Well, because of the pressure and lobbying from builders and home and developers and the suppliers to those people, they discounted that impact fee by 25%. So each year when they file and collect those impact fees, they're only collecting 75% on roads. Now, schools get 100% now. Some of you may remember that at one time the county, because of the pressure from the builders, they reduced the collection of impact for education, and they lost like about $30 million over 2 or 3 years. And so the question is that they are digging a hole. They're building up a bigger and bigger deficit of growth-related road construction that is needed to deal with the roads and the growth. And I think that needs to be addressed. And frankly, you probably should be lobbying for, if you're getting the heat for some of this road issues, you ought to be lobbying at the county like I do, that they should, and I'll say that to them tomorrow morning, is that they need to get rid of that discount and start collecting the full 100% for the road payment. Now, though, the issue is that you annex in, and you annex on both sides of a highway, for instance. Now you're collecting all the property taxes for there, and yet you're the ones unwilling to pay any money towards increasing road width, putting in intersection lights or anything else. In addition, I don't see any requirement that the developers pay for mitigating any of the traffic issues with, say, widening the roads. They have voluntarily talked about some things, but I haven't seen a traffic analysis report to say just how much impact is going to be on the roads. So those are some things to keep in mind, because I think that this whole process, as I've observed it, been going to 14 cities in Lake County, is unfair to the citizens, because we're going to be the gridlock county, not Lake County. We're going to be the gridlock county if the city councils and the county don't start restricting and put a moratorium on this development. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'd just like to respond a little bit, because the last speaker appears to have quite a grasp on maybe how local government funding works. We confused impact fees with property tax revenues that I was talking about. The county gets property tax revenues from us as well. And then when someone's annexed, the city doesn't take the property tax. We get property tax and they get property tax. We now provide the services while they get the same amount of money with providing no services. And then we're going to talk about cities using debt and throughout to varies. Well, obviously, we don't know anything about Leesburg's finances, where we're coming to speak, because we don't have any debt other than our utilities, which have nothing to do with this growth issue, and have a long track record of fiscal conservatism, low tax rates, and letting growth pay for itself. Developers do pay for right-of-way. That's what traffic studies do. They have to do whatever the county tells them. Whatever the county tells them, the traffic study, they have to pay for. That's just the way it works. So, we can come up here and we can say, oh, this doesn't do this and this doesn't do that, without any substantiation. You have the right to do that. That's what you can do. But, unfortunately, just like, county residents don't get to vote for us, we also don't get to vote and decide whether people from California get to move here and add additional traffic to Lake County. But that's just the way the world works. So sorry for that.
That's why I moved here.
I just want to say that I really find offense. We need to be working together. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Roebuck, but all those comments that you said at the end, that's just not uniting the county and the city with regards to roads, that the roads are not, that the roads are in the county and we don't pay for the roads. We are impacted, every one of us, whether you're in the city, living in the city, or whether you're living in the county. It doesn't matter. We have got to start working together. And I didn't come to the meeting last Thursday. I'm glad I didn't. I'm taking care of an aged father, which is stressing me to no end. But one thing I do know, our schools are suffering. My grandkids are going to be probably going to the Leesburg schools, because that's where my kids went. I worked diligently with Jimmy Burry on all the fundraising for our schools, because our schools are dilapidated. My business does state contract work in this county, in Leesburg. I help you. I want to help you, but we have to work together, and I really hope going forward in 2022, we can approach of working together and not isolating ourselves. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Terry Blessing, and I do live in the county off of number 2 Road on Blue Sink Road.
Scott Sattler again on East Dewey Robbins Road, and I also take offense to some of the remarks in regard to the fact that it's not up to the residencies and the constituencies to figure out how our taxpayer dollars are spent. That's on you guys. You say growth pays for itself. In response to that, if that was true, then your elementary school, per Dan Miller, wouldn't be 79% over occupancy. Your middle school wouldn't be 17% over occupancy. And your high school wouldn't be 2% from over occupancy. So again, unification is what we try to describe and what I spoke of when we first got here. The performance that took place here between the city and the county in the last meeting that we had was the most unprofessional, disgusting thing I've seen by a city council or any commission. And I, for one, I come from Newport News, Virginia, where I lived for a long time, where city councils almost nearly 2 decades in arrangement just like this that's going on here. And that's why I'm so involved, is because it is personal. I've been here and done this before. It took us 20 years to recover from poor decision-making, which is the same thing that's happening here. Areas that were never developed became underdevelopment, and this is what we faced. We faced a city commission that felt like it was being picked on by a county commission, and I'm using your words, Mr. Minor. And this is not the case that takes place here. And if you all have unwoven conversations, so to speak, with the county, that's on you guys. You all have to work together better to provide a better service for the people that are in this room. We're not sitting here begging. We're not sitting here telling, oh, you know, that we want you to change the whole world, but we want you to fulfill your positions and your obligation to the people. And the record states that you're not. So you can glorify yourself all you want. Even the last time we were here and you were so excited about 51 neighborhoods being approved. Well, where's the taxation money for that for your school systems? And then it comes back to us, well, we're going to fix the school systems once we raise the taxation. Well,
Wrap it up, please.
How many developments have to come if you're so impressed by 51 developments being approved while you've sat on the commission? Where's that money for your school systems? And why are we still dealing with over-occupancy in each one of your schools? And why are we not at least enlisting something other than a developer donating 15 acres for you guys to argue who's going to pay for it?
Well, I'll defend Commissioner Roebuck. He was responding to some criticisms of the city. I would encourage you all to attend the county commission meetings and school board meetings and be as vocal there as you are here.
Yes, is still public comment?
This is the last one. Go ahead.
Thank you. Deborah Shelley. I just wanted to confirm for the record that our written comments stated that I also object to the rezoning of the Whispering Hills. And I do agree with Terry Blessing that I would really like the cities and the counties to work together to achieve a balance for the city dwellers and the folks who live in the rural areas. Thank you.
Roll call.
Commissioner Roebuck,
Yes.
Commissioner Burry,
Yes.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Commissioner Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Peterson.
Yes. Someone please introduce 6A4.
Introduced and asked to be read by title only.
An ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, annexing certain real property consisting of approximately 148.67 plus minus acres, being generally located east of U.S. Highway 27 and on the north side of Dewey Robbins Road, lying in sections 31 and 32, Township 20 South, Range 25 East, Lake County, Florida, providing that said property so annexed shall be liable for its proportionate share of the existing and future indebtedness of said city, provided that such annexed property shall be subject to all laws and ordinances of said city as if all such territory had been a part of the City of Leesburg at the time of passage and approval of said laws and ordinances, providing that such annexed territory shall be placed in City Commission District 3 and providing an effective date.
Move approval.
Second.
Dan moved. I just need a second. Oh, okay, second. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have a second. So, yeah, Dan Miller, would you please give a staff report?
Good evening again, Dan Miller, Planning and Zoning Director. The next three cases, we're coming back to where we started a couple hours ago. This is three applications, the first being the annexation for 149 plus or minus acres, general locations on the north side of Dewey Robbins Road, east of US 27. The next case will be a large-scale comp plan that is being requested to go from Lake County Rural to City of Leesburg as state. And then the third case is the PUD zoning application, which is a request to go from Lake County A agriculture to City of Leesburg PUD. This is contemplating 449 lots. Again, design, architectural standards, 2.25 acres of recreation. It's all single-family development. There's no commercial here. It is contiguous to the south to the Whispering Hills development, 30% open space. That's about it at this time.
No, thank you, Dan.
You mind if I ask a question of Dan real quick
Yeah, no,
before
go
you sit down? I know staff originally recommended disapproval. Is this, the recommendation still the same, given it is now contiguous? Was that based on the ISBA?
That is
or-
correct. Originally, the staff did recommend approval, and we stuck with that up until the point, if you go back and read the original recommendation, it was based on solid planning, and at the bottom of that recommendation, what it stated was, at some point in the future, because I didn't know how this previous case was going to go, stated sometime in the future, if this case goes through, then the Hodges case, from a planning perspective, would be adjacent to the city. It would be more contiguous, and it would be logical from a planning standpoint. We do know that there is additional development at some point in the future to be proposed that's even south of here, going down to the turnpike. So from a planning perspective, it works now. At standing on its own, it did not. Thank you.
So I didn't hear you clearly. Is staff recommending it?
Staff recommended disapproval originally because Hodges came in on its own
Okay.
as a single development out there without
Okay.
Whispering Hills.
What about the planning? Can you speak to the planning and zoning
Planning
commission?
Commission also recommended denial.
Okay, that's what I thought.
But the key here is Whispering Hills from a planning perspective.
Okay, thank
So
you for that
staff's
clarification.
recommendation is approval at this point.
At this point, staff would be willing to recommend approval. Previously, without the
Right.
Whispering Hills approval, staff could not recommend
Right.
approval.
Before you sit down there, I know
Thank you,
there's
Dan.
some,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, there's some changes in the PUD from 40 to 50-foot lots.
Yes, sir.
50 to
What should
60.
be showing in there is the original red line of what they requested, the red line for the changes that increased the lot size and et cetera. So what we're recommending is the increases that we put in there, and you'll see those underlined.
Thank you, sir.
Any other commission comments? Public comments?
Good evening again, Deborah Shelley, East Dewey Robbins Road, Howie in the Hills. I just want to submit for the record that we object to the annexation, comprehensive plan amendment, and rezoning of Hodges Reserve, located in the Ilaha Lake Apopka Rural Protection Area. We believe the annexation does not meet the essential requirement of law in Chapter 171-204 Florida statutes that states lands to be annexed should be urban in character. We do believe it's possible to provide a variety of housing types, including workforce housing that integrate into the rural lands characteristic of the area by providing wider buffers and reduced density. I do agree with the first recommendation of disapproval. There were 3 recommendations, and the first one was the timing issue. The second and third one were the ones that dealt with incompatibility of surrounding areas and inconsistency with adjacent lots, which are very small. We hope you consider requesting that the applicant significantly reduce the density, provide wider buffers, and submit revisions that are more consistent with the adjacent rural area. Thank you. I'm going to submit my written comments. I also have written comments from a number of residents. I don't know, there's 8 or 10 here, and I would like to submit them for the record as well.
Okay,
I don't have to read all their names, right? I can just submit them for the
You
record.
can submit them, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you. I have one other one, but I'll come up at a different time for that one. Thank you.
And I overlooked the developer. I don't know if they would like to come and speak now, or they want to speak after public comments. That's up to you.
We have a presentation prepared, and we're happy to deliver if that's what the commission would like. My name is Andrew McCown, and I'm with GAI Consultants in Orlando. MCCOWN. So thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come before the commission tonight and describe this project. It's been a while since you've seen this, so we have prepared a short presentation. You may remember portions of this from several months ago at your first hearing. We also have representatives of the owner and the project team here for any other questions, not planning related. So this project, Hodges Reserve, as Dan mentioned, is 148 acres, more or less, located north of Dewey Robinson Road. The comprehensive plan amendment that we are requesting is to assign a future land use of estate, Leesburg, from the agricultural county, and a rezoning from ag county to planned unit development. You're very familiar, based on this and other recent projects, the surrounding area. Dewey Robbins Road is an improved county collector and intersects US 27 just a quarter mile to the west. I'm sorry, it's 3/4 of a mile to the west of the site. The surrounding area, we've noted some of the recent projects that have been approved and are in various states of approval or construction in this area. You'll note the Whispering Hills PUD, which was just approved tonight, actually borders the site to the north. And we would now be contiguous to city property, or the city limits. So as was mentioned earlier, Whispering Hills had no objections from DEO, as did we. We also had no objections from DEO. And that property has been annexed and adopted into the city. We are now adjacent to city limits. And as noted by Dan, that objection, the original objection to the proposal, is now a moot point. Other timing considerations that came up at submittal was the Leiden-Nicholson project, which is to the southwest of the project. It planted the city's flag squarely at the intersection of 27 and the Turnpike, and that project is going to require a lot of rooftops to support that development. And we would be able to contribute to that overall rooftop count. And, you know, these projects, they don't spring up out of the ground all at once. They get developed over time, and so there is time for these units to be absorbed, and not everything gets built out at once. Here's an image of our concept plan. As I'll show later, we have arranged the larger lots to the end and the stormwater ponds to the outside of the project to provide that buffer from the smaller lots that are arranged to the interior. We have about 9 properties that are adjacent to our project, and several of those are actually, as mentioned, the Whispering Hills project. So there are parcels to the east and the west that are existing single-family homes. We are buffering those with larger lots or, as I said, retention areas. We also have a 25-foot buffer around the entire project. This is a diagram of those lots, the 50-foot lots to the exterior, the smaller lots to the center. The conceptual phasing, the first phase would be on the southwest corner, and then the second phase to the north, and then the third phase and the second entrance to the project from Dewey Robbins would be in phase 3. And each of those phases would have its own amenity area and park space to accompany that phase. As we've said through this process, we really are building this for what we're calling the hero buyers. These are the buyers that are seeking out smaller homes because they are cost effective. It's the heroes like the police and the fire and the teachers that everybody says they want to be able to live in the communities that they serve. Well, these are the exact households that we are trying to encourage in this development. And, you know, over the last 10 years, we have seen just nationally a decrease in the average lot size. And it's not just about cost. As we'll see in the next slide, there are lots of reasons that people desire smaller lots these days. The land prices and material costs, we hear about the rising costs of materials. All those things factor into the size of lots. As I said, it's not just about cost. It's a preference that has been growing over the last decades. Studies of long-term national trends have shown that senior buyers and younger buyers are preferring these smaller lots, both due to the cost, but also due to the ongoing cost of maintenance. The smaller lots means lower irrigation requirements, lower chemical requirements for the lawns, and also the higher quality of amenities that can be afforded in these developments. This is just an example of the amenity center, a typical amenity center for this development, and then some of the proposed home elevations. Again, you've seen all these slides before. As I said, I'm here and the rest of the team is here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Yeah, I meant to bring you up sooner. Any additional public comments?
I believe you forgot your clicker. Oh. My name is Joanna Mitchell, again. I live on South Dewey Robbins Road, and my husband and I own property there. We are affected by these properties as we are in the immediate area where the land is going to be, the main issue with Hodges is not only the fact that it's such high density, which is completely incompatible and inconsistent with the area, but it's opening, the only entrances that it has are onto this little 2-lane country road. And the only responsibility that they have is to widen the road and maybe put some turn lanes that are adjacent to their property. But as I stated before, coming from 27, you go on to Dewey Robbins, you're going to go down almost a mile, and there's going to be the Hodges Reserve. Then it's going to keep going, and then it turns on to South Dewey Robbins, and then it goes on to East Dewey Robbins, and all that traffic is going to be going all the way through there to cut through to 19, to get to Howie in the Hills, to get to Tavares, to get to Claremont. Those are the fastest ways to get there. And those roads, they simply cannot handle it. I have seen no traffic studies that have been done. Hodges has made 0 concessions about reducing density. And you're talking about that the roads are Lake County's responsibility, but it's you as a body who are creating this impact by approving these subdivisions that don't belong in the area. And if people want smaller lots with less maintenance, let them move to a condo. Let them move to the suburbs. Leave our rural community alone. And for the record, I object to the annexations, the comprehensive plan amendments, and the rezoning, specifically as it pertains to Hodges Reserve. Thank you.
Vance Jochim, Jochim. So I've got three more observations. One is that I'm kind of confused because I read through the entire packet. I went through every page on both of these developments, and I looked and I kept looking and looking and looking, trying to find traffic analysis, trying to find details on the student seats that were going to be generated by these, the need for them. And I'm amazed. And I go to other cities where they provide that right off the bat. And it's like your city doesn't acknowledge that those issues are out there and address them at the front end, but instead you prove this and then, oh, well, maybe it'll work out later. I think that you need to kind of establish a new mode of operating and making these decisions. And so I'm confused because the packet said 3 different places on those 3 different agenda items. The staff says they were denying this or not recommending this. But yet we come in here and now we got the planning director come up at the last minute and say, well, now we'll approve it because we've had this. I don't think that that has been proper notified, and I think that you ought to postpone it just purely because your packet was inaccurate. It stated one position, and then a logical person might think, well, it sounds like it's not going to get approved, you know, but then there's this last minute change. And so I think that you ought to postpone this, notify people with ads in the papers and at your next meeting, maybe put it in the agenda corrected, so that if the staff is now saying it's okay to go ahead because it's contiguous, then say that and decide it at that time. Let's see. Why aren't traffic analysis reports required before the final hearings? I kind of just suggested that, but you don't know then what the traffic loads are or anything else. And maybe your planning director or somebody this city manager could describe why you don't do that, but yet I see other cities do that. I'm not saying all of them do. There may be a technical reason, like you're saying, well, because here in Florida I've found there's a lot of laws that are vague and not concrete, and so people interpret them different ways. But maybe you could answer that before you make the decision. And then just for your information, tomorrow I'm requesting the county board launch a review of the traffic analysis reports, the process in this county. And that includes the MPO, I've talked to them, and everything else. I was a corporate auditor for many years. I investigated fraud, I investigated corruption in large government projects and other things. And my sense is that that some of these traffic analysis reports, if they're provided, maybe you're biased because the traffic engineer is paid by the developers, and there doesn't seem to be an objective review of it, just people accept it. And then they don't say anything, and the city doesn't come back and maybe analyze it and say, well, I think I disagree. I think you need to start putting funds aside or something to pay for a traffic light.
Please wrap it up.
And with that, the one thing is that I keep hearing in the comments here is the previous developer, they worked with the residents. They compromised,
Sir,
they
3
did
minutes.
some concessions, but this one did not, and I think you ought to keep that in mind.
Jackie Mezak, 7200 Turkey Acres Lane, Howey in the Hills, Florida, unincorporated Howey. First, for the record, I just would like to say that me and my family are immediately affected parties as our property is directly adjacent to the proposed Hodges Reserve development. I object to the annexations, comprehensive plans amendments, and rezoning as they are inconsistent and incompatible with the surrounding areas and present infrastructure. The first issue I'd like to discuss is how the Hodges Reserve has done absolutely nothing to work with the community at all, to find any kind of compromise or adjustment to their proposed plans that are very blatantly the exact opposite in character to their surroundings. Whispering Hills, be as it may, has at least come forward to meet with the community and allow us to voice our opinions, concerns, and present suggestions. 50%, 2 full sides of my family's property will be bordered by Hodges Reserve. The only mention of any kind of buffer or barrier, really, between my literal side and backyard is a handful of bushes to 1 tree per 100 feet or so, as they presented in their original presentation some months back. This means years of constant construction, giant machinery, hundreds of random strangers in and out to perform said construction, let alone the hundreds of new residents eventually that will be directly adjacent to my property with zero protection for me and my family and the other neighbors in my same position. My children will not be allowed to safely play and explore on their own property without constant supervision due to potential dangers that will be posed upon us with this development. The very reason we chose to live in this rural community on a property set far off the main roads is to allow my daughters to experience the last slice of freedom this world has left to offer, to allow them to gain an independence and have a childhood that cannot be found in conventional neighborhoods. The fact that Hodges hasn't even offered to place a physical barrier between the development and the adjacent properties is deplorable and downright disrespectful to us. At a bare minimum, the current residents deserve an ounce of protection and security between us so we can attempt to bear with the already crushing situation we're having to endure. Second issue I'd like to discuss is the very prevalent concerns of the Leesburg public school system and how will they be able to handle such an influx of children, especially if we're talking about workforce housing. We're talking about young families coming in with children. One Google search on Leesburg public school ranking and performance is really all you need to see that this city has a lot of work to help to better the situation. My almost 5-year-old daughter is set to start kindergarten next year, and as a parent, I'm literally struggling with potentially homeschooling her in place of putting her in Leesburg public schools that we are zoned for because of performance ratings. So I ask you, how will these schools, again, be able to handle the increased volume of children and not fail them? What is this city and county willing and ready to do to support these schools to not allow continued severe overcrowding, which can lead to only further decline in performance, teachers burning out, lack of student transportation? I really ask you to please consider these concerns in your decision today. Thank you.
I've been asked by one of our senior residents to read this short letter into the record. Dear Commissioners, I am a property owner in Leesburg, Florida. I object to the annexation and rezoning of Hodges Reserve project brought before you today. This high-density residential project will result in significant traffic on Highway 27. The project is inconsistent with the rural character of the surrounding area and not compatible with the Ilaha Lake Apopka Rural Protection Area. The lot sizes are incompatible with the character of the surrounding area. Furthermore, the project does not meet the essential requirement of law in Chapter 171-204 Florida statutes that states land to be annexed must be, quote, urban in character, unquote. The majority of land within the RPA is rural in character, in contradiction to the intention of the Rural Protection Area designation that these lands remain in appropriate land use categories. I cannot attend the meeting in person, but submit this letter for the record. I am a member of Citizens for Preservation of Rural. Another member will submit this letter in my absence. I respectfully request that you deny this annexation. Sincerely, Bob Steele. I'll submit that for the record. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ellen Batchelor. I live at 24240 Turkey Lake Road. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And thank you to all my neighbors who understand the statutes put in place that are supposed to protect us. I don't understand a lot of that, but what I do understand is that when we moved out there 21 years ago, we were shown an article in the newspaper that said that Dewey Robbins Road was on track to be paved within 2 years. 8 years later, still nothing. I sent emails to the Transportation Department and Debbie Stivender, excuse me, who was our commissioner at the time, once a month for 3 years, and with the help of my neighbors, it finally got paved. So the previous gentleman that was talking about Hanover was insinuating that the county paved the road for development, and that is just not true. Had I known that this was going to happen, I never would have fought so hard to have the road paved. Now, we have bicyclists that train in groups, usually on the weekend, using the road. Why? Well, it's scenic, it's very, very hilly, and there's not a lot of traffic. Yes, it takes patience to wait for the right time when you come to a hill to pass them, so imagine what would happen with so much more traffic out there. We own an orchid business where we grow orchids in a large shade house on our property. Would having more people close by benefit our business? Sure it would. Just like building houses could potentially be advantageous to your family's lumber and building supply business, Mr. Roebuck, and perhaps that's why you're so gung-ho on development. I find that to be a little bit of a conflict of interest.
Please refrain from criticizing a commissioner.
That is not why we moved out there. People own 5+ acres and that's the rule if you want to live in the rural protected area. Just on Turkey Lake Road off of Dewey Robbins, we have numerous small agricultural businesses on our street. There's our business, there's a tree farm on the property next door, there's 2 plant nurseries on either end, there are horse ranches and cattle, there's a llama farm and an animal rescue who has roosters crowing at 5 a.m. when I let my dog out. I love it, but what's gonna happen when all of these new homeowners start to complain? Are they gonna shut them down? How does a subdivision fit into that scenario? They call it rural agricultural for a reason. I'm all for growth and development, but it should be consistent with the rural character of the area and not potentially impact the existing livelihood of all the farms and ranches that are here. I agree with Mr. Miller on the first decision that they made to not vote it in, as it's inconsistent with the rural character of the area. Your city commission has not taken one iota of consideration whatsoever for the existing property owners that live in this area. To
3
quote
minutes.
you, Mr. Roebuck, from the last meeting we had on this, it sucks.
Kim Cronin. My family lives at 6531 Dewey Robbins Road, just south of this proposed Hodges development. This is a rural area. Most residents have 10 acres of property, no less than 5. This high-density development of 449 homes has no business being on Dewey Robbins Road. This property is 148 acres in the middle of nowhere. There's no infrastructure there at all. Surrounded by rural property owners that have 10 acres of property. Dewey Robbins Road is a rural road, not appropriate for high-density development. Most houses have at least 2 drivers. That would add how many more vehicles to Dewey Robbins Road, going out to Highway 27 or going out to 19? They should have direct access to Highway 27. I object to the annexation, the comprehensive plan amendments, and the rezoning for the Hodges development. This development is inconsistent and incompatible with the surrounding area of rural lifestyles. I am asking for you to deny this development. Thank you.
Hi again, Lori Brown, 6217 Dewey Robbins Road. Months ago, several of us received a letter from you guys talking about this development, that it would be 1-acre parcels. That's a lie. Probably like within a month of the first meeting, we gave you guys like 2 or 3 different petitions of like more than 75 signatures. That has fallen on deaf ears. At this point, I am a Lake County resident. At this point, I wish I could be a City of Leesburg constituent, because then you would have to listen to me. We're falling on deaf ears at this point. I oppose it. Thank you.
Hello again, Christine Dodonna, Lime Avenue, Yalaha. I'm just going to say, with the exception of the fact that Hodges isn't making any concessions as far as lot size, I would echo everything that I said earlier. I would express a lot of concern about the additional, again, school-age children that are going to be in a subdivision that's got that kind of density, the traffic that goes with that, the pollution that goes with the traffic. Again, what was said shortly ago about the previously existing ag businesses that are functioning and their people's way of living. What happens when the new subdivision people don't like the 5 a.m. roosters? I know that I live in a place where a bunch of us have that, and I know that we are all fine with it. I have a subdivision that's about to try and come in across the street from me. I don't know how those people are going to like it. And it sounds maybe ridiculous if that's not your concern, but it's important to those of us who have those concerns. And I just hope that you guys will consider that and think about the people that are already there. Think about the people who chose to be here before it was the last place that they could afford to move. Also, there's plenty of unfilled up subdivisions in Lake County, for example, over towards Groveland, where people could go ahead and build houses in subdivisions that have already been approved and have been sitting at low capacity for years. Just saying.
Scott Sattler again, East Dewey Robbins Road. I'd like to either second or third a postponement for many reasons. One, not even half of the voters here have actually been on the road that we're talking about, so maybe you can take an opportunity to drive down it to see where we have some major issues. And one of them would be to Tira's bullet points after the point in her second presentation, we'll call it. If they're not responsible for county roads outside the project, this particular neighborhood is entrancing and exiting from a rural road. That not only are they not responsible for maintaining and or changing, per her bullet points, but it is a rural protected road as well, which says that it can't be redesigned in its current form, and it's to stay that way. Another point there is as this neighborhood entrances and exits, the only way to exit from Dewey Robbins at this point would be there is no traffic light to 27. So you have a 4-lane major highway at 55 miles an hour. You're going to have school bus traffic. You're going to have everything exits to a stop sign. Now, I don't know about you, but that's just not possible. As far as the cycling events are concerned, we have that sponsored through Howie in the Hills and or Lake County. That's a major event that comes through there. If you've not seen that, they come to train for those events, and they come from all areas. We've had guests at our place all the way from Miami, Florida, that come to the hills of Howie because of the training purposes and because of the hilliest terrain. What that does is complicates your view. Each hill provides a block until you get over the hill. If we're going to add school bus stops and traffic left turn lanes, no left turn lanes, just the regular road as it sits, it's not possible for this traffic to be able to route itself in and out of its own neighborhood. So if we're requiring the first development to entrance and exit off of Highway 27, all the rest of these developments should have to do the same. To back what Deborah said, the Florida state statute, that its requirement is that it has to be urban in character. Another reason why the people who haven't driven down Dewey Robbins Road need to do so. It is not urban in character. It will not be urban in character no matter how hard you try to shake your magic wand at it. It doesn't meet that requirement. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Daisy Gomez. I live at 24237 Turkey Lake Road. I wanted to take this time to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I also agree with everyone else to reduce the density as well as widen buffers, as I am immediately affected. My property is directly adjacent to the proposed development, Hodges Reserve. I believe that a physical barrier needs to be installed, not just landscaping buffers, as I have livestock. I do want to bring it to your attention on the conceptual plans for the Hodges Reserve, some of the houses that are proposed surround high voltage power lines, which is unnecessary radiation and can potentially be health hazard. As for questions that I have, if this development, Hodges Reserve, is passed, who will be responsible for unnecessary garbage as well as damages to properties adjacent to the proposed development? According to the Daily Commercials report published in September 9, 2020, Leesburg was listed among top 10 dangerous Florida cities. That being said, my question is, this development, Hodges Reserve, is passed. How often do you plan on sending patrol cars, and what is the estimated time for an emergency call to be taken care of out in this area? This is why I'm kindly asking to reconsider and object to the annexation and rezoning for the development for Hodges Reserve. Thank you.
Again, I'm Reggie Thomas, 7850 Dewey Robbins Road. I grew up in New York City, and very high-density area. Probably my residence on Dewey Robbins is the first time I've been on a number of acreage. I'm really interested to find out how you gentlemen and ladies are going to deal with the residents that live in these subdivisions like Whispering Hills and Hodges when they hear all the gunfire in the Dewey Robbins, Turkey Lake area. You're going to get the calls. And the thing is that when the elections came around and all the folks were frustrated and they were out there with their AK-47s and AR-15s, and New Year's Eve when they light the place up, and July 4th, we'll see how you deal with that. Thank you.
Any additional comments from the public? Commissioners, any additional comments before we vote?
I do have a couple things. Dan, maybe I missed it in your presentation because I did step out for a minute. That overlarge easement that runs through there, what is the situation with that?
So that is an existing power line that that cuts through the property. That is that's the extent of the power easement. And it does bifurcate the property. And so you can't have homes in there, but
Well,
you
sure.
can have
Absolutely,
things like,
I would recommend not on that, yes.
yeah, roads and retention and things like that.
Okay.
It's a distribution line, right? It's
Yes.
transmission.
And
Okay,
for the
transmission,
record,
yeah.
my name is Andrew McCown.
Oh, yeah, okay.
No, thank you.
I would say I do have a couple other comments real quick, is I do have some concerns with the small buffer around this and the smaller lots. I think it's pretty high density in this area, very small buffer, and everything going onto a two-lane road. I mean, I do have some concerns with this layout and with the buffer and the overall density and the smaller lots.
Other commissioners, any comments?
Yeah, I had a question. I didn't know whether with Dan Miller potentially. There's a July 16th letter from the county regarding this stuff that's part of the packet. And it talks about, the way I read it, like there might be a proposed road leading to the north that would connect Whispering Hills to Dewey Robbins, and I just want to make sure that would not occur, because the whole point is to funnel traffic towards 27.
Normally, Dan Miller, normally in this type of situation, you would want the neighborhoods to have some connectivity to draw them out. Now, if you want to keep that from happening, that's fine, but normally you would want that connectivity to be able to flow back north in order to go to the commercial areas, and they wouldn't go off 27. But if commission doesn't want that, it's not a problem here.
Yeah. Well, I think as far as my support for this project, I cannot agree to that, because it defeats the whole purpose of the previous development emptying out onto 27. If it
Okay,
ties into
understood.
Dewey Robbins Road, it's
Understood.
going to be a main thoroughfare.
So, in essence, you'd like to keep these two developments separate and
That's correct.
not interconnected?
And
Okay.
I may be naive in my wishes, but that's
Okay.
pretty.
Any other comments?
Yeah. Could we get I can't imagine a developer would care. There were a couple comments about fences. If a property owner wants a fence instead of a landscape buffer, is that a doable thing? Do you guys have any objections to that?
That'd be fine with staff.
Yes, I'm sorry, Ben Snyder, 605 Commonwealth Avenue, Orlando. If the commission would like to require us to construct a 6-foot PVC fence adjacent to neighboring properties to provide a physical barrier, then we will commit to that, similar to other projects constructed in the city.
Okay, yeah, and what I'd do is I'd probably make an amendment that to add the fence, but then with the opt-out, just like the other project, unless they get a signed affidavit from the property owner requesting not to have one.
Sure, yes, sir.
That way the residents get a choice of what they want. And then my other comments were just, as much as I like Whispering Hills, I mean, nothing would make me happier for it to get built. I think the big difference is that developer hasn't built anything around here, and we've approved things like that in the past, Silver Lake, Terra Oaks, some others that we hope are going to get built one day, but, the idea that the Leesburg market supports $500,000 to $1 million homes, I don't know. It does support this type of development, and we have a lot of demand for it. And just to be completely transparent, because this comes up every time, or almost every time there's a development, is I get accused of having a conflict of interest because growth benefits me, and growth absolutely does benefit me. But why I'm so in favor of growth is that I think it benefits a lot of people. Whether that's the people that are going to live there, the landscape businesses that service it, the restaurants, the downtown merchants. And the way that Florida statute works is, for it to be a conflict of interest, it would have to be a benefit only to me. This would be and development doesn't meet that standard. And the statute also says that if I don't have a conflict, I am required to vote. So it's not like I can just say, oh, I don't feel comfortable, I don't want to vote. So I just want to be completely transparent there. And then in regard to the impact to the county and school, because there's a lot of kind of things get said. I think it's important to maybe put some numbers on it. So, for instance, this development specifically, assuming a taxable value of $250,000, so you have a higher assessed value, but then you're going to get a homestead exemption and some other things. So that's a pretty conservative estimate. So it's going to generate right off the bat $494,000 in road impact fees when it's built, and if Mr. Yoakum gets his way, maybe it'll be double or triple that. And the schools would get $4 million right off the bat impact fees. That's to build new schools. Then every year, based on the current value, assuming prices never go up and tax rates never go up, the county would get $565,000 every year. And the school board would get $751,000 every year. So those are the real numbers of the economic impact generated by that. And that is all on top of the $470,000 that the city gets to provide services. And of course, our number is lower because we have a lower tax rate. And with that said, I think this is a good development. I think we need a mix of developments, and that's what doing Whispering Hills and for kind of the higher end, and then this for workforce brings to the city.
Any other comments?
If you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
We have two other points of clarification and information. One, I'd like to bring up our traffic engineer, Mohammed.
Thank you, Andrew. Mohammed Abdullah, Traffic and Mobility Consultants, 3101 McGuire Boulevard, Orlando, Florida. You heard some comments about a traffic study. A traffic study was prepared for this application and submitted to the city, county, and the state as required by the process. We have, as you've heard, we've had no objections back from staff on the traffic study, and it meets the requirements. There's a subsequent study that will be done later on in the process should this be approved and move forward, which provides some more detail on the engineering level reviews, but the traffic study did find that the network does support the application before you. As far as the roadway itself, Dewey Robbins, it's a standard county road. We've met with the county engineer to discuss our access to the roadway and the ability of the roadway to accommodate the proposed development. And it was the county engineer's opinion and our opinion that the roadway is capable of supporting the project. Thirdly,
Please be quiet.
Item was, oh, yes, thank you, the intersection. The intersection at US 27 and Dewey Robbins will be part of subsequent analysis on preliminary review. We anticipate that that intersection will be lighted. It'll have a signal at some point in the process. Of course, that'll have to be vetted out with the DOT. However, all indications are that, as you heard, the intersection will probably require better traffic control than just a stop sign on Dewey Robbins. And if that is the requirement and that is approved, this applicant will be required to install that signal. The state will require them to install the signal at their cost. So the intersection, the roadway, and the general area is capable of supporting the proposal.
Thank you, Mohammed. Andrew McCown. The second matter is with regard to the PD conditions, which I believe you all have a copy of the red-lined PD conditions provided by staff. There were a number of items in there that have continued to go back and forth that we would like to discuss and or state our preference to remain with the conditions as originally proposed, subject to the discussions here. The first is with regard to item 4, development standards. In a number of places, the lot sizes were changed from 40 and 50s to 50s and 60s. We would propose that that remain as proposed, 40s and 50s. And then on page 3 of 15, those standards would need to revert back to the as proposed standards for 40s and 50-foot lots. And the reasoning behind that is, as we stated, to keep the price points of these homes within the range of the proposed buyers, the hero buyers that we mentioned. That is really going to drive the prices of these homes, is if these 40 and 50-foot lots can be achieved. The next item
Can
was...
you, real quick on the lot sizes, because I know you guys have a lot of other developments in the area, I think a couple in Groveland. What's the difference in price point on a 40-foot lot and in a 60-foot lot?
There's actually not a huge price difference because people are going to buy as big a house as they can afford. And so the houses on the 60-foot lots tend to be smaller houses because they have to pay more for the lot. So they get less house for about the same amount of money, and people are going to buy as much house as they can possibly afford. So the difference is they get a 2,800 square foot house on a 40-foot lot, or a 1,800 square foot house on a 60-foot lot for around the same price point. So there's not a huge disparity. You can put a bigger house on a 60-foot lot, but it doesn't make people in Leesburg able to afford those just because you have the ability to build a giant house on a 60-foot lot. Is that,
Okay.
was that what you were asking, Dan?
So yeah, so you're basically, you're losing about a third of your square footage when you go from to keep the price point the
To
same.
get the yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And yes.
Thank you.
You want to go?
So-
Okay. So staff had proposed in the landscape buffer some changes in 6A. We're totally fine with those proposed changes. 6B, Mr. Miller and I talked about it, and he would be okay. The intent there was to provide, it was to be able to compress the buffer around places that there were other natural existing buffers like ponds and wetlands and retention ponds and things like that. And Mr. Miller said he understood that and was okay with leaving that in.
So that's in B? You unstrike?
Yes, sir.
So you want to unstrike B?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
You want to unstrike B?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
please. And Mr. Miller said that was okay with him. And then we are fine with Mr. Miller's, or staff, sorry, proposed changes for 15, B, C, and D. So staff added a section B and struck C and D, and we are fine with that, and fine with staff's proposed changes in section 17 also. Is that abundantly confusing?
Yes. Let's go back to the lot size just for a question. So you were proposing 450 units, right?
449, yes, sir.
Okay, so with the lots becoming small or going back, is that going to then result in more open space?
Or going back to
Well,
small
I mean,
lots?
you first had 40-foot lots,
Right,
40 and 50s.
correct,
Then we made the change, 50 and 60.
right.
So, we're still at 450, so now with
we
450
didn't-
lots, are we going to have more open space, or are you going to be asking for more lots?
No, we're not asking for more than 449 lots in any case, and staff didn't say we couldn't build 449 lots with the change to 50 and 60-foot lots if we changed the minimum size to 50-foot lots. In each case, the layout of the subdivision would remain substantially similar, which would not affect the open space. It would just affect the width of the lots. It's not a layout change. And
I mean,
what-
I think the
I'm not
confusing part is.
following.
Yeah, you're
maybe
losing me
not
on
yet.
that one.
So the concept plan that was shown on the screen, let me jump there real quick, maybe. Oh, there we go. So that concept plan is showing 40 and 50-foot lots. So the buffers and the open space and the retention and the amenities are all sized for the original proposed 40 and 50-foot lots. So the change by staff from 40 and 50 to 50 and 60 came after that was submitted. So that it does represent 40 and 50-foot lots.
So if the city held you at 50 and 60-foot lots, there would be fewer homes developed. It would shrink.
There would be fewer homes, fewer amenities, less retention. There would be less of everything. But so the 30% open space already takes into account the 40 and 50-foot lots at 449 units. Again, if that's confusing enough.
But you're not objecting to the minimum house size?
Well, we had proposed that the house size revert back to the original proposed. And the commission,
So
we could, I mean, if the commission says it's just too many and you want us to, turn half of the 40s to 50s, we can agree to decrease the number of 40s to whatever half of 257 is. If that helps the commission. We want to offer some of the 40-foot lots, but if the commission thinks that it's too many, then we can agree to change 100, 125 of them.
Would you be okay with, if we gave you the 40s, but keeping the increased square footage? That way, because what you're saying is if you have the smaller lots, people are building bigger houses. So, I mean, 1,600 square feet, is that, on a 40-foot lot, that would then get us a little, more house and a little higher taxable value.
Right.
I don't know if that.
It is hard to fit a single-story 1,600 square foot on a 40-foot wide lot. If we could agree to a 1,450 square foot, that kind of meets in the middle there. Gives you a bigger lot, a bigger house, but if we agree to 1,600, it precludes us from offering a single story on those 40-foot wide lots.
And personally, I had a major problem early on with the 40-foot lots. Then I really thought, I'm not buying the house, I'm not living in the house, and your market. I mean, if you put it out to sell, someone has to buy it, or you're gonna, not sell the house. So that was where I kind of backed off on my real objection to 40-foot lots, because, I know it happens in other urban areas. And if a person wants a 40-foot lot, they can look at it and determine they want a small lot in whatever house they decide to purchase. So if you feel there is a market for that house, and what you're not, for me to come and tell you, hey, make it a 1,600-foot minimum house, and you saying you can't do that on a 40-foot lot, and I don't want to vote on something that you can't build or won't build, and we just gotta something that we won't be happy with, or you can't make a nice product. And I seen the subdivision having Groveland. I talked to Dan about it, 'cause I think one of the houses was so close to the fence, I don't know who would buy that house. So Dan assured me that that wouldn't happen in Leesburg. But I did go look at your development in Groveland, and it was a nice development. So I backed off on my objection to the 40-foot lots. You know, you have to build it, you got to pay for it, and someone has to approve to want to live there. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Christian.
So I guess I may need your help, Dan Miller. In the package that we read, the developer proposed 40 and 50-foot lots. I believe staff struck that, changed them to 50s and 60s.
That is correct.
And now the developer wants to take them back to 40, 50s.
That is correct. That's what
And-
they'd like to do.
So, I mean, I was trying to help Jimmy out here. I was a little confused earlier. So I think, help me out, Commissioner Burry, but he's questioning if you're shrinking from 50s and 60s to 40s and 50s, where's the land going? It's going somewhere. It's either more green space, more lots. I mean, it's going somewhere. And I don't think we got a straight answer on that.
We didn't relay the subdivision for 50 and 60-foot lots, whether you have 40-foot and 50-foot lots or 50-foot and 60-foot lots are the same depth, so there's the same developable.
Okay, you answered my question right there. Okay, on the depth, okay.
So,
Okay.
I mean, the
Live and learn.
layout would look almost identical, the street layout, regardless of the lot size.
Okay, no, thank you for that.
So less lots.
If we change the minimum lot size to 50-foot lot minimum,
Yeah.
then yes, sir, it would go down in lots.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I was trying to understand, okay.
And maybe you covered it a minute ago, I wasn't on the page when you were talking about it. I think it's D1, where you struck to 40 and you went to 50, now you're saying back to 40, but it says that the 50-foot, which I guess now is 40, shall not be located directly adjacent to the 25-foot buffer. I'm just looking for some clarification on that. Looks like you got a 25-foot buffer all the way around the thing.
Right. The original intent there was that the 40-foot are centered inside the project, and the 50s are around the outside, the larger lots are around the outside. So when staff changed it to 50-foot lots minimum, and then the larger lots being 60s instead of 50s, I think the intent would be that all the lots that are shown as 40s right now would be changed to 50s, and all the lots that are shown now as 50s would be changed to 60s. We did not update this plan based on staff's proposed revisions to the PUD.
Okay, I'm confused. Aren't you going back to the 40s and 50s?
Yes, sir, which is consistent with this plan.
Okay, so then D1, where are we at on that? You struck the 40, got the 50.
No, we didn't strike the 40s. That was staff's proposed changes.
Okay, well, what I'm looking at, what are we talking about here? Because I'm like really confused. It seems like we're changing a lot of stuff here in the 11th hour, in my opinion, but, so what are we doing? I mean, what size lots won't be adjacent to the 25-foot buffer?
50-foot lots, which is shown on this plan. The buffer around the outside would only have the larger lot size, which are the 50-foot lots.
Okay, so.
They never changed their site plan. They just left it.
Whichever larger size we approve, whether that's 50 or 60.
We're not trying to change it all. We wanted it approved as originally submitted, and we thought until now that's what y'all had gotten. You had gotten our submission, and then you had gotten what staff recommended, the changes, but we apologize
It
for
may have
that.
been a bad choice of words. I guess the reason the commission's confused, and I'm confused, or was confused, is, the packet we read reflected 50s and 60s.
Yeah, so
And, I mean,
apologize.
what I'm hearing now is the developer never had any intention of changing it. You left the site plan the same.
We were.
Yeah, you're working
trying-
off this site plan, which is 40s and 50s.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so
And some of the commission has been struggling with 40-foot lots on other developments.
So the D1B, which was the 1,300 struck, and now it's 1,600, so where are we at with that one?
That's where Commissioner Roebuck asked if we could go to a minimum of 1,600 feet on the 40-foot lots, and I had said that to, build a minimum of 1,600 feet would make us do all 2 stories, which is tough on there not to offer any 1 stories. So I asked if the commission would support a 1,450 square foot minimum, meet in the middle instead of one or the other. You want to clarify? Okay.
If I may, Commission,
Yeah, help
like
us
to
out.
just
Help us out,
clarify.
Dan.
the strike-through is what they originally requested. The underline is what staff is recommending. And it's kind of an either or. Hate for you to get into a negotiating session about the size of the houses and everything else here. It's basically, do you want to go with staff's recommendation, or are you okay with going with theirs, what their original request was?
Well, I
As
guess
far
my,
as, and we only, for the purposes of this discussion, it's just D 1 and 2, and that's it. So if you go with the 40-foot lots and the 1,300 or 1,450 square foot house size, that'd be 4,000 square foot lot and 40-foot minimum. If you go with what staff is requesting, you get a 50-foot lot, 1,600 square feet, house, 5,000 square foot lot, 50-foot width. It's just an either or is all we're requesting.
is it reasonable
I
to?
didn't follow that now.
Yeah, well,
So
go ahead.
if you, developer, if you build a 40-foot lot, how big is the house going to be?
They range in size from typically 1,300 and change square feet up to probably 2,400 square feet.
Okay, and if you build a 50-foot lot?
At 50-foot lots, the houses range in size from typically 1,600 square feet up to 3,200 square feet.
Okay, so what your proposal was originally, and what you want the commission to approve, is 3 phases
Yes, sir.
with roughly 216 40-foot lots and 193 50-foot lots. I just grabbed that off your number. I mean, I'm in the ballpark, I think.
I think we had listed 257 40s and 192 50s.
All right, so we're. Okay.
Ish.
Ish.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so you put a proposal on the table earlier to reduce the 40-foot lots from,
13 to 14.
just this evening, you're going to reduce 40-foot lots from 216 to what? You said half?
Oh,
Reduce
I
half of
said
them?
if.
You'd be
if it-
agreeable to?
If it pleases the commission, there's a chart shown, if we could go back to the original chart, that shows 257 40-foot lots and 192 50-foot lots. If the commission would like for us to downsize, down whatever, the number of 40s, 100 lots or 125 lots, so take that down to 130, a maximum of 130 instead of 257 40-foot lots, and we would convert the rest to 50-foot lots. If that pleases the commission, then we can commit to a maximum of 130 or 40-foot lots.
And Commissioner Burry, so that answered, his proposal back to you, you got it, so everything looks the same.
Yeah.
Same space, same streets, they're just popping out. He said it in the inverse, which makes it confusing. They're not decreasing, we're increasing the size of the lot. So everything still looks the same.
Street layout looks the same. It's a
Right.
constantly.
So same green space, same everything, and so there you go. So that's what they're compromising to you. I think our guys are still pushing back to you, saying we want 50 and 60-foot lots.
Without voting, I mean, can we kind of poll the commission right now? I mean, this thing's so muckied up. I guess I'd like to see where the commission stands on staff's recommendation. I mean, I'm not, and well, I'll go ahead and say I'm struggling with this thing either way. So I guess I'm saying we're going back and forth on what if we don't have the votes either way?
I'm
wasting a lot
with
of time.
Commissioner Christian. I the 40-foot lots don't bother me. If that's what people want to buy, then I'm not going to tell them where they got to live.
I'm concerned that, we just asked Whispering Pines to give us a a much larger buffer, and we're gonna consider 25 feet on this one? It's all in the same area.
And I would just think the difference between the Hodges and Whispering Hills is that you have a different market. You're gonna attract a different customer base. This will be more, okay, so I guess I'm talking to the whole crowd. I'm talking to the mic, Mr. Mayor. But my
Please let the commissioner speak. We let you all speak at the microphone without interrupting you. Please be respectful.
And I guess my comments is that this development will attract, as you call, hero buyers. They will have different amenities than Whispering Hills. So, I think ask them for a 25-foot buffer. I don't know if you can get more than a 25-foot buffer on the layout that you have here. I don't know. But I think that will make the commission and some of the residents happy if we could get a larger buffer around the development.
I think we also have to look, when we were talking about Whispering Hills, we're talking about 1,000 acres. So a little bigger buffer on 1,000 acres is less significant than requiring 150 acres to have a larger buffer. That is not apples and apples. That's kind of apples and oranges. So I'm not necessarily in a position where I've got to have a bigger buffer for these guys.
For what it's worth, a lot of the, area around the perimeters where we located retention ponds and things like that. So we've only got a couple of areas that we actually have lots in and are adjacent to neighbors.
Okay. And Mr. Mayor, maybe, I don't know if Dan could come back up real quick, and I know he gave a staff recommendation, but how do you feel about the proposal from the developer, the counter, the compromise with the 130 40-foot lots and then the remaining lots being 50-foot lots?
The commission should be aware that we have a lot of 40-foot lots already approved in Leesburg. If you want to go with the 40s, I'm fine with that, but you need to be aware of that. As far as putting in 130 instead of 257, I think that's a good step forward. And then increasing the, up to 319 for the rest of the 50s, we can live with that.
Okay. And I guess the latest was Lake Denham and
Yes.
ride through Lake Denham, and they built that pretty, Lake Denham?
Lake Denham.
And they built that really nice, which I was concerned about. I think there's like 600 houses there.
Right about 600.
And, and that development turned out, I think, pretty nice. A lot of people from diverse backgrounds moved in. So, sometimes we look at these numbers, and because Leesburg has not had a lot of new subdivisions, I was concerned about Lake Denham, but it turned out pretty good with one entry going in and out as well.
Commissioners, any additional comments?
I guess I'll just make it a motion to amend to a maximum of 130 40-foot lots, with the remainder being 50-foot lots, reverting sections 4D 1 and 2 back to the original, which is the strike-through language on the current. And there was one, and then unstriking 6B, which was just clarifying the buffer where there was, I guess, other existing buffer.
Second that amendment.
Oh, and also to require a 6-foot PVC fence on the perimeter unless the adjacent property owner submits an affidavit requesting there not be a fence on their property line.
Can we clarify that's the perimeter adjacent to neighbors as opposed to the entire perimeter of the property?
Yes, the perimeter adjacent to neighboring property. Yeah.
Commissioner, will you consider on that motion the reduction from the 256 to the 130 40-foot lots, make it proportional over the 3 phases? That way it's not 130 jammed into one phase and it's spread throughout.
Okay.
Would you make it proportional over the 3 phases so that we don't have an entire phase of 40s?
Is that work with the phasing?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay.
If that pleases the commission,
All
that's.
right. And then also to make it proportional over the 3 phases with regards
Yes,
to
sir.
lot sizes?
And I'll second that.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the amendment.
I think that's
Roll call.
Yes.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Commissioner Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Roebuck,
Yes.
Mayor Peterson.
No. So now,
Now you have an approved, an amended
okay,
PUD.
okay, we're approved as amended, okay,
Or what's,
okay.
so
So now,
now you're back to discussion with an amended motion and a reduced size subdivision. So you lopped 100 and X houses off. Well, you didn't,
that's what we,
you
that's what we
reduced
just
lot
approved.
sizes.
So,
So you, right,
We reached the maximum number of 40, sure.
right, it's gonna shuffle the deck. I don't know what the number is.
okay, everybody's clear on that. Okay, so now roll call on the original.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Commissioner Connell,
No.
Commissioner Roebuck,
Yes.
Commissioner Bury,
Yes.
Mayor Peterson.
No. So, now, somebody please introduce 6A5.
Introduced and asked to be read by title only.
An ordinance amending the future land use map of the comprehensive plan of the city of Leesburg, Florida, changing the future land use map designation of certain property containing 148.67 plus minus acres from Lake County Rural to City of Leesburg Estate Residential for property generally located east of US Highway 27 and on the north side of Dewey Robbins Road, as legally described in sections 31 and 32, Township 20 South, Range 25 East, Lake County, Florida, and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments, Commission? Public comments?
Kim Cronin, 6531 Dewey Robbins Road. I sit here and listening to this. This is like a joke. These developers have not made any concessions with any of the neighboring property owners. Your staff denied this. I was at the meeting that was denied. I'm sitting here tonight and I'm hearing that staff denied it. Oh, staff approved this, staff struck this out. We're back to the same plan that was submitted when staff denied it. I'm not sure what's going on here, but, you know, I think that the residents of Dewey Robbins Road in the area, the people that live in that area, need to have a little bit more respect from you. You're talking about you don't want the people to be going out through Whispering Hills. You're also saying that that's why you're approving it, because it's connected to Whispering Hills. So what do we got? All this traffic's going to come out on Dewey Robbins Road when we have people that ride horses, we have animals that sometimes get loose. You know, we all act as a neighborhood. We all gather together and we help gather our animals back up again, whether it's ours or somebody else's. This seems like it's going to be a little crazy to me, to be able to live in a rural area and have animals and then have 400 and something houses right next door to us. Because, you know, I can't wait for the time you tell me I have to get rid of one of my animals. Thank you.
Scott Sattler, East Dewey Robbins. A little clarity to one of the commissioners, if I could, on his efforts to transparency, quoted some statutes. I believe I saw something in your comprehensive plan, an ordinance of 21-10. So for the record, you did say that you would be, if this is advantage you and income for you, as it would be for landscape companies and everywhere else. So for the record, individually, you do stand to profit from this? Well, that is what you stated. So we need to know, as a residency, whether or not you, well,
You're
hold
out
on.
of line. You're out of line with your
I'm out of
question.
line?
Yes, you are.
Your comprehensive plan, 21-10, states that this gentleman or
The
anybody
commissioner
on
is
this
not
commission...
subject to your interrogation. This
It's
is-
not interrogation. We have the right to know whether or not the ordinance is going to be enforced. And if that's the case, then it's not being enforced. We can request that he be withdrawn from the voting process if he is on the record stating that he is going to advance in financials on this.
If you think you understand the law, you're welcome to file a complaint with the state.
You can count on that, brother. Let me add one more thing, if you don't mind. From a residency standpoint, to have the head of planning and developing cheerleading for the efforts of a new development where, you know, he works for the city of Leesburg, and he is supposed to be organizing for the people of Leesburg.
Sir, I think you've criticized enough people in the room.
Not for the development. It's because there has to be some criticism here.
Okay, let me talk for a minute.
Yes, sir.
We have a process. We had a 3-2 vote. We gave this fair consideration. I voted against it. I'm sorry it didn't go your way, but we're not going to sit and listen to you criticize staff and criticize fellow commissioners.
I'm just asking for clarification to transparency, which is the right to do that. He noted that his effort to transparency, if the ordinance 21-10 speaks to the fact that if he's gaining financially from this, then he needs to be withdrawn from the vote. That's what it says, sir.
Then you can file a complaint.
That's what I'll do.
Do I state my name again? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
Daisy Gomez, 24237 Turkey Lake Road. So I did kind of need, I'm adjacent to this, so I'm kind of wondering, again, back to my question that I asked, is who's going to be responsible for the damages and the garbage that is coming onto my property? Again, I have livestock, which are cattle, 2 of them which are bulls. This is why I'm requesting a buffer, a larger buffer, and an actual barrier.
And in fact, I believe the developer is offering you a fence. The way we
A
amended this.
PVC fence, excuse me, sorry.
Well-
A PVC fence when I have 2 bulls. That, no offense, and I'm trying to be very respectful.
No, I was trying to be respectful to you. Maybe
Yeah.
the developer can speak to that. He may work with you on a different type of fence.
Yeah, because those larger lots that you are talking about are exactly adjacent to where the bulls are. That's why I'm requesting the buffers, larger buffers and more barrier.
Yeah.
I do. Exactly.
What are you requesting from them?
Yes, I mean, animals are animals. Okay, so respectfully, animals are animals. If you upset them, what do? Especially a bull.
Yeah, they're going to be tearing up a developer's PVC fence at his expense.
Okay, so back to my question, who will be responsible for damages adjacent to the properties and the garbage that comes onto the properties?
I'm not a lawyer, I can't answer that one.
Just as a matter of kind of urban planning, back to urban planning issues. You know, typically, when you back up a house to a rural area, that's seen as a beneficial thing for the residential area. You know, so when you go to planning school and you're a certified planner, you prioritize how your community is developed. The most pristine thing is a residential property, and that's whether you're an urban or a municipal corporation. What's held sacrosanct is residential property, and then that's ranked according to how you want your community developed, where you want your residential property to be. Residential next to residential, low density. The next best thing next to residential is high density residential. The worst thing you can do is have residential next to industrial. For example, this body didn't want to approve a residential, I think it was the Sundance subdivision, next to a county industrial park. So we rejected that residential subdivision. In this case, I'm posing to this body, as well as your planning director, that backing up a residential property to a farm is not going to hurt the residential property. It's not going to hurt the farm either. So in this case, your property value issues, you're not losing anything. The house isn't going to be harmed value-wise because it's next to a farm, and that farm's not going to be hurt because a house got built next to it. So the petitioner, the citizen is concerned that if the cows get out, who's going to be responsible for that?
That's
That's
not
gonna
what I
be-
said.
And that I think your question was damages to fences.
No, no.
And who's going to be
Damages to
responsible for
properties.
things that come onto your property.
Damages to properties in general.
Damages to property, and who is responsible for when these things
Yes,
happen?
so who would I
And that
seek?
becomes a civil matter, okay?
Damages to the properties adjacent.
If
To the
if
development.
houses, if the answer to the question is it becomes a civil matter, typically, okay? So if the cows are damaged by the house, it's the house's fault. And if the cows are damaged, and if it's the inverse, it's the other thing, which is a civil matter.
Okay, thank you. That's it, thank you. I just didn't need you guys to be insensitive.
Vance Yoakum, 12619 Milwaukee.
So I don't talk over you again, 3 minutes.
Tavares. Yeah, actually, I just have one point here, and that's that this whole argument and then the young lady talking about the conflicts between agriculture and now high-density housing. And I come, as mentioned, from California, and one of the reasons people moving out is because of some of their rules. But one, and I moved here 15 years ago, by the way, is that I remember following a case of dairy farms. They used to be out in San Bernardino County, and they kept building, just like here. The cities were rampantly approving new developments, and they were coming up and encroaching right next door to dairy farms, and like the young lady is talking about. And so then they start complaining about the operation of the dairy farm, about the smell and the mooing and everything else. Now, in that case, I remember there was some, maybe it's a Supreme Court hearing, that decision that said that the public had a right, the majority of the residents had a right to basically challenge and force those dairy farms to move. Well, you can't get milk too easily in Los Angeles because the dairy farms kept being pushed farther and farther away. And so my question would be just, you have an attorney here, is maybe he could address the issue of what happens when those people start complaining about the agriculture operations that already exist. And I don't think going to civil court is the answer, is whether or not they prevail and what rights do the existing residents have. Thanks.
Florida has a right to farm act, so if you're a legitimate farming operation, then you're protected in the state of Florida.
My name is Lydia Cook, 26100 Serenity Lane, Howey in the Hills. I just want to point out that the reason you were looking at approving Hodges was because it was going to butt up to Whispering Hills. And the area that it butts up to Whispering Hills is water, Greenland, and then on past that is where they were putting the 1 and 2 acre lots that were buildable, that was going to be 5 acre green space around total. There's one small spot that's got a few houses that are 70 to 150 foot lots.
If there's no additional comments from the commission, we'll have roll call.
Commissioner Connell?
No.
Commissioner Roebuck?
Yes.
Commissioner Burry?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
No. Would someone please introduce 6A6?
Introduced and asked to be read by title only.
An ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, changing the zoning on approximately 148.67 plus minus acres from Lake County A agricultural to City PUD planned unit development to allow for a single-family residential subdivision for property generally located east of U.S. Highway 27
and on the north side of Dewey Robbins Road, as legally described in sections 31 and 32, Township 20 South, Range 25 East, Lake County, Florida, and providing an effective date.
Motion for approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments, commission? Comments from the public? Roll call.
Commissioner Roebuck,
Yes.
Commissioner Berry,
Yes.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Commissioner Connell,
No.
Mayor Peterson.
No. Move to city attorney items, if any.
Yeah, we have none at this time.
City manager items.
Happy New Year. Look forward to working with everybody, and that's it.
Roll call.
Commissioner Connell,
No.
Commissioner Roebuck,
Happy New Year, and I hope, Mayor, that all, the rest of your meetings are all downhill from here and shorter too.
Indoctrination by fire.
Commissioner Berry,
Nothing tonight.
Commissioner Christian,
Just want to say it was a pleasure and a privilege to serve the city in the mayoral capacity, and we look forward to supporting Mayor Peterson and Mayor Pro Tem Burry, and what a way to start your mayoral term. Great meeting, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody. Meeting adjourned.